Chapter 1699. Stop! How Tianwang roared. With a swoosh, the ice sword split into two, and then into tens of thousands, covering the sky and earth. With a terrifying sound of breaking through the air, they attacked Xiaobai at the same time. Xiaobai, don't worry about communicating. I'll block him for you. Tang Zheng gave up on communicating. His figure flashed and turned into a ray of light, facing Hao Tianwang. Whoosh! A black hole appeared in front of him, and the sky-swallowing technique expanded to its maximum power. Sky swallowing. The black hole expanded rapidly as if it was really going to expand to the same size as the sky. Those ice swords had no way to pass through the black hole and were completely sucked in. These ice swords were not the real bodies of magic treasures, but illusions. However, they were not any weaker than ordinary magic treasures. It was a pity that they encountered the sky-swallowing technique. Now that they were in the imperial city, Hao Tianwang's territory, Tang Zheng was not afraid of hurting the innocent, so he dared to use the sky-swallowing technique so unscrupulously. This was Tang Zheng truly using the sky-swallowing realm to his heart's content. The power was as he had expected, abnormally terrifying. Hao Tianwang's mind actually trembled as if it was going to be sucked into the black hole. He reached out his hand, and an ice sword struggled to escape the suction of the black hole and flew back to his hand. He and the ice sword became one, occupying half of the sky. The sky was completely frozen, becoming a part of the ice sword. Hao Tianwang merged into it, and his body could not be seen at all. However, his voice rumbled like thunder. You can die proud. Ever since I mastered the divine technique, no one has been able to force me to use the man and sword as one. Tang Zheng sneered and said, Die? Then you'll have to break my sky-swallowing technique first. Sky-swallowing technique? You really think you can swallow the sky? Hao Tianwang disagreed. The sky is full of me. I'll see how you swallow me. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? After a slight pause, Hao Tianwang finished preparing and roared, Kill! Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sky full of ice swords flew towards the black hole. This was clearly more powerful than the previous ice swords. Unfortunately, the black hole took them all in without giving the ice swords a chance to escape. Not long after, all the ice swords that flew over disappeared. In the heaven realm, these ice swords turned into waves of energy. They were not weak at all. They silently merged into the tree of life. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. Hao Tianwang's attack was indeed extraordinary. The energy contained within it was enormous, and it had actually benefited him. However, Tang Zheng was not happy for too long. His heart suddenly sank, and he found some clues. Hao Tianwang's attacks were endless, as if there was no end to them, one round after another. As the saying goes, dripping water can penetrate a stone. With so many attacks coming one after another, as time passed, it was actually effective. The edge of the black hole trembled slightly. How could Tang Zheng not understand what was going on? His heartstrings trembled, and his face turned pale. Hao Tianwang's attack is actually so powerful that even the sky-devouring technique can't block it? Although he had completely comprehended the sky-devouring technique and reached the sky-devouring realm, there was a huge gap between his cultivation and Hao Tianwang's. The sky-devouring technique could restrain Hao Tianwang, but it might not be able to completely restrain him. This was because Hao Tianwang's continuous attacks were also a huge threat to the sky-devouring technique. This was how it worked. There was nothing in the world that could absolutely overwhelm everything. It was either the east wind that overwhelmed the west wind, or the west wind that overwhelmed the east wind. Hao Tianwang could barely resist the sky-devouring technique, but it was not so easy for other people and things. A huge black hole hung high in the sky. Once a huge suction force enveloped someone, that person would be sucked into it with a whoosh, turning into energy to replenish the heaven realm. The ruins in the imperial city also flew up quickly, covering the sky and the earth. There were ruins everywhere, but the black hole took them all in without being picky at all. Rumble! Suddenly, a series of strange loud sounds came from the ground. What's going on? Many people's hearts were thumping. They did not know what was going on, but the next scene made them tremble. The ground actually rose high, and pieces of soil and rocks flew up. Not long after, a huge pit appeared in the imperial city. All the soil and rocks were sucked into the black hole. Only then did everyone understand the terror of the sky-devouring technique. This black hole could devour everything. Not only people, but even the earth could be devoured. It seemed that the sky-devouring technique was not impossible. Hao Tianwang was also shocked by this scene. He had never seen such an evil divine ability. If the entire imperial city was swallowed into the black hole, it would definitely be a painful blow to him. He could not sit back and watch. Suddenly, he glanced from the corner of his eye, and his eyelids twitched. He was secretly delighted as if he had discovered a new world. He laughed out loud and said, "So your sky-devouring technique is not invincible." He found the traces of trembling at the edge of the black hole. This was not there before. It was obvious that his attack had worked. Hao Tianwang seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. He used all his attacks, and half the sky turned into a huge ice sword. Whoosh! The huge sword flew toward the black hole. This huge sword was much bigger than the black hole, and Hao Tianwang was attached to it. He was bound to destroy the black hole with this attack. The overwhelming terror actually hit him in the face, and Tang Zheng's heartstrings kept trembling. He found that the trembling at the edge of the black hole was getting more and more intense. No matter how he activated the sky-devouring technique, he could not make up for it. Hao Tianwang is really too powerful. Perhaps the sky-devouring technique can only be a real threat to him after my cultivation increases greatly. Tang Zheng understood. He turned his head and looked at Xiao Bai and the Kuan Peng. He found that the light had completely spread to the Kuan Peng's body. Xiao Bai and the Kuan Peng were motionless, as if they had lost consciousness. They were indifferent to the earth-shattering battle outside. They must have reached a critical moment. I have to hold on until the last moment. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and did not retreat. He activated all his power and kept using the sky-devouring technique, pushing the power of the sky-devouring technique to the extreme. Boom! The huge sword pierced the black hole. The black hole trembled violently, but the huge sword was also shattered and sucked into the black hole. However, the huge sword was too big. It could not be shattered in a short period of time. Both sides were fighting a war of attrition to see who would be able to hold on until the end. Pah! The edge of the black hole trembled a few times, and a gap appeared. The suction of the black hole decreased sharply. Tang Zheng tried to use his power to make up for it, but he found that it was a drop in the bucket. He had consumed too much power. Although the sky-devouring technique was powerful, it consumed a lot of power. It was commendable that he could only hold on for so long. There were more and more gaps in the black hole, and the huge sword was getting smaller and smaller. Almost everyone else was attracted by this scene. They had already hidden outside the range of the black hole's suction. They did not dare to take the risk. Even King Wuling did not dare to be so careless. At the same time, thousands of pairs of eyes inside and outside the imperial city were also watching this scene. They had never seen anyone who dared to fight against Hao Tianwang, let alone be in a stalemate. Chapter 1700. More and more holes appeared in the black hole, and the aura became more and more chaotic. The giant sword continued to shatter, and the fragments were sucked into the black hole, becoming smaller and smaller. Boom! A thunderous sound rang out, and a blinding light flashed in the air. Everyone subconsciously closed their eyes. However, when they opened their eyes again, everything had changed. The black hole had disappeared, and the ice sword's light was weak. A crack ran through it, and although the ice sword was not destroyed, its vitality had been greatly damaged. Hao Tianwang appeared again, standing next to the ice sword. He looked up at the sky with his mouth wide open. Following his gaze, everyone's mind shook, and they were dumbstruck. The sky had collapsed. A corner of the sky had collapsed, and a huge hole had appeared. This scene frightened everyone, including Hao Tianwang and Tang Zheng. The two involved had never thought that the exhibition would turn out like this. How could the sky collapse? Hao Tianwang looked at Tang Zheng with fear and said through gritted teeth, "This is all because of you. Even if the other party was killed and a corner of the sky above the imperial city collapsed, this would still be a huge humiliation and scar. It would be a ghastly sight hanging here. Anyone who raised their head would be able to see it." This was truly a slap to his face. Tang Zheng had used up a lot of energy. If Hao Tianwang attacked again, then he would not have enough energy to use the sky-swallowing technique. The more this was the case, the more he did not dare to reveal his true situation. He deliberately provoked, "Hao Tianwang, this is just the beginning. My sky-swallowing technique is not just for show. It can really swallow the sky." Hao Tianwang did not believe it at first, but now he had no choice but to believe it. Facts spoke louder than words. Wasn't that corner of the sky right in front of him? What should he do? Hao Tianwang began to think. King Wuling and the Imperial Guard also stopped attacking, confronting the four symbols and Azura. King Wuling was not afraid of these two, but his Imperial Guard was not their match. This caused the two sides to be in a stalemate for a long time, and there was no clear victor. The scene of the sky collapsing caused both sides to fall into silence. They looked at each other, waiting for their own people to give the order so that they could attack again. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still no order to attack. Tang Zheng and Hao Tianwang looked at each other from a distance. Both of them wanted to kill the other, but neither of them acted rashly. Tang Zheng was deliberately stalling for time. The longer he delayed, the better. Hao Tianwang was afraid of the sky-swallowing technique. He did not know that Tang Zheng was temporarily unable to use the sky-swallowing technique. Otherwise, he would definitely attack Tang Zheng without hesitation. Suddenly, Tang Zheng heard some movement behind him. It turned out to be Xiaobai. He was overjoyed and shouted, "Master, I did it!" Success! Tang Zheng shivered and immediately understood that Xiaobai was talking about persuading Kuan Peng. For the time being, he had no energy in mind to care about how Xiaobai did it. He could not wait to order, "Quickly take Kuan Peng away." "I won't go. I want to go with Master," Xiaobai said stubbornly. "How can that be? Kuan Peng is the most important," Tang Zheng retorted. Xiaobai was unmoved and insisted, "No one can be compared with Master. Master is more important than Kuan Peng." After saying that, Xiaobai actually let go of his hand. He held the bloodthirsty scepter with both hands and pointed it at Hao Tianwang from afar. It was as if he was saying that he would rather die in battle than surrender. Hao Tianwang was shocked and his expression changed. This was because he understood the conversation between Xiaobai and Tang Zheng. How could Xiaobai persuade Kuan Peng? Wasn't Kuan Peng stubborn? What method did Xiaobai use to make Kuan Peng change its mind? Hao Tianwang could not figure it out. However, he knew that if he did not act now, it would be too late. Hence he roared, "Kill!" Monstrous killing intent surged out again and engulfed Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng could not block it at all. He could only watch as the ice sword flew towards him. Hao Tianwang was overjoyed. It turned out that Tang Zheng was bluffing and was already an arrow at the end of its flight. He had almost been frightened by him. "Don't even think about hurting my master." The four symbols and Azura roared loudly and rushed towards Tang Zheng without any regard for their own safety. They tried to block the sword for him. However, they were too far away and could not block the sword in time. Hao Tianwang's face revealed a sinister smile. It seemed that he was determined to win this sword. Whoosh! Suddenly, a ray of light covered Tang Zheng. The ice sword pierced the light, but the light did not waver. The ice sword suddenly changed direction and stabbed towards Hao Tianwang, giving him a taste of his own medicine. Hao Tianwang cried out in alarm. The ice sword was fierce, but after all, it was his treasure. With a thought, the ice sword's attack disappeared. Looking closely, Xiaobai was already in front of Tang Zheng to protect him. As for behind them, it was Kuan Peng. The attack just now was Kuan Peng's counterattack. It blocked Tang Zheng's attack. Kuan Peng had such a divine ability. Even Hao Tianwang's attack might not be able to hurt it. Especially now that Hao Tianwang had used up a lot of his power was greatly reduced. It was even more impossible for him to break through Kuan Peng's attack. Hao Tianwang was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed his sword at Kuan Peng and said, "Kuan Peng, do you know what you are doing?" Kuan Peng's voice rang out. However, it did not ring in their ears. Instead, it rang in everyone's mind. It actually did not need physical contact to be able to communicate with its divine sense. "Hao Tianwang, you have already recovered your memory. You have already remembered what you did in the past. Do you think that I will still stay by your side?" This sentence caused Hao Tianwang's mind to be greatly shocked. He opened his eyes wide in disbelief and said with a trembling voice, "How did you recover your memory?" "The blood of the royal family can recover my memory. You didn't think of that, right?" "The blood of the royal family?" Hao Tianwang's pupils shrunk as he stared at Xiaobai's palm. There was no blood on it. If he knew that the blood of the royal family had this kind of effect, Hao Tianwang would definitely not let Xiaobai get close to Kuan-Peng. Of course, if Tang Zheng and Xiaobai knew about this, they would not have gone through such an intense battle and accidentally allowed Kuan-Peng to recover its memory. Xiaobai proudly raised his hand and said, Hao Tianwang, you traitor. In the end, you will never understand the power of the royal family. Hao Tianwang coldly snorted and said, What's so great about the royal family? Back then, weren't they all wiped out by me? Only you are a fish that escaped the net. Xiaobai's eyes burned with anger and said, You traitor still have the face to mention the past. You swore to be loyal to my father, but you went back on your words and betrayed him. A disloyal and unjust person like you will pay the price one day. Ha ha ha. Price? What right do you have to say this? What can you do to me? I will first kill you, a fish that escaped the net. Then the royal family will completely disappear from the sky. Chapter 1701. Xiaobai retorted in high spirits. A spent force? Then you should break through the Kuan-Peng's defense first before you talk big. After saying that, Xiaobai protected Tang Zheng and retreated to the Kuan-Peng's side. Tang Zheng looked at the Shura and the 4 symbols that were surrounded, and hurriedly shouted, For symbols Shura, come back! Hearing that, the 4 symbols and Shura quickly opened up a bloody path and flew towards them. Hao Tianwang said angrily, Do you really think the Kuan-Peng can stop me? It was hurt in the battle that year, which means its divine power is not omnipotent. Hao Tianwang raised his ice sword and rushed over aggressively. Kuan-Peng, it's up to you. Xiaobai raised his head and shouted. Hua! A ray of light rose from the Kuan-Peng's body, protecting the 2 of them and the 4 symbols and Shura that were flying over. At this moment, Hao Tianwang had also arrived. The ice sword immediately slashed towards the few of them, but it hit the ray of light. Just like before, there was no earth-shattering momentum, and the ice sword flew backwards. Hao Tianwang hurriedly caught the ice sword, but was sent flying by the force of the ice sword flying backwards. Xiaobai and Tang Zheng looked at each other and smiled. How can the Kuan-Peng's divine power be broken through so easily? Let's see what other abilities Hao Tianwang has. Tang Zheng's head turned cold. The purpose of this trip was not to kill Hao Tianwang. Even with the Kuan-Peng, they could not do this. Then there was no need to complicate matters. Taking the Kuan-Peng away was the most important thing. Therefore he whispered to Xiaobai, Xiaobai, quickly let the Kuan-Peng leave with us. Leaving this place is the most important thing. Xiaobai immediately accepted the order and said to the Kuan-Peng with his divine sense, Kuan-Peng, let's go. Xiaobai and the Kuan-Peng already had a mysterious divine sense communication, unlike outsiders who could only passively accept the Kuan-Peng's communication. Whoosh! The Kuan-Peng's body lit up. Then the Kuan-Peng moved. The Sky City also moved. It flew up from the Kuan-Peng's back and flew towards the 9 heavens. Ah! Screams could be heard coming from Sky City. Since the Kuan-Peng had removed its magical power, the city in the sky could no longer be fixed. Come, let's go to the back of the Kuan-Peng. Xiaobai shouted as the 4 of them flew onto the back of the Kuan-Peng. They were enveloped by a layer of light, so they didn't have to worry about the enemy's attack. Hao Tianwang was enraged. He pointed his sword at the Kuan-Peng and yelled, Stop them! Don't let any of them go! Attack! King Wuling understood and immediately ordered everyone to attack. Colorful magic weapons whizzed towards the Kuan-Peng. However, when the magic weapon met the light on the back of the Kuan-Peng, the attack disappeared. The magic weapon changed its direction and attacked its master. Some people were not strong enough and were not able to control their own magic treasures in time. They were even killed by their own magic treasures and died on the spot. Everyone was thrown off their feet. It was a mess. King Wuling shouted orders, but he couldn't stop this mess. He was unwilling to give up and attacked the Kuan-Peng himself. The effect was the same. He couldn't break through the Kuan-Peng's magical power. The Kuan-Peng flew into the distance. Its huge body was shrinking bit by bit. However, it was still a huge monster. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling chased after it with their subordinates. They kept roaring and trying to make the Kuan-Peng stop. Xiaobai looked at this scene coldly and said, The Kuan-Peng has been taken over by this traitor for so many years. Now, it has finally returned to its rightful owner. The Kuan-Peng has regained its freedom. Tang Zheng said worriedly, The Kuan-Peng is a big target. Although it can block their attacks, if they keep chasing, when will it end? Xiaobai had an idea. He smiled mischievously and said, Master, I know what you're thinking. Then I'll make them unable to chase us. Tang Zheng looked at Xiaobai curiously. He didn't know what he meant. Xiaobai didn't explain much. He said to the Kuan-Peng, Kuan-Peng, it's up to you. Make the city in the sky crash. Yes. The Kuan-Peng replied calmly. Hao Tianwang and the others chased after it with all their might. However, they couldn't hurt the other party. This made them very frustrated and helpless. Suddenly, the sky darkened. Everyone still didn't understand what was going on. They hurriedly looked up. Immediately, pairs of eyes opened wide. They looked at this scene in disbelief. Many people couldn't help but stop in their tracks. They stared at the sky in horror. Their eyes couldn't help but turn dark. Sky City was actually descending rapidly, heading straight for the crowd. Hao Tianwang and King Wuling were also stunned. The city in the sky had been floating in the air since ancient times. There had never been a situation where it fell. What was going on? They scratched their heads but couldn't figure out the reason. The cruel reality didn't allow them to continue thinking. They had to find a way to stop all this. What was the city in the sky? It was the symbol of his power and majesty. It was the result of his painstaking efforts for tens of thousands of years. How could he just let it fall? Hold the city in the sky. Hao Tianwang didn't decline. He flew into the sky and raised his hands forward. The air quickly dropped to the freezing point and condensed into pieces. Two huge palms appeared in the air and held the city in the sky. Tang Zheng was also stunned by this scene. He didn't understand and hurriedly asked, Xiaobai, what's going on? Xiaobai said mysteriously, Master, all of this is the credit of the Kuan-Peng. You definitely can't imagine that apart from the Kuan-Peng's ability to give someone a taste of their own medicine, it also has another incredible ability. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded. He anxiously urged, Don't be mysterious. Tell me what divine ability it is. When we first came to the sky beyond heaven, didn't you see many mountains floating in the air? Also, the city in the sky and those floating mountains are actually based on the same principle. They all have a mysterious connection with the Kuan-Peng and are controlled by the Kuan-Peng. Tang Zheng stared at the Kuan-Peng's back and was speechless for a long time. This divine ability was indeed too heaven-defying. No wonder the city in the sky suddenly fell. The Kuan-Peng has recovered its memory and this divine ability, so it can easily control the city in the sky. Xiaobai added, although Hao Tianwang has imprisoned the Kuan-Peng for countless years, he doesn't know this secret at all. Tang Zheng looked in the direction of the city in the sky and asked curiously, Can Hao Tianwang hold the city in the sky? Xiaobai revealed a playful smile and said, He can try and see how long he can last. Tang Zheng understood. No wonder Xiaobai was so confident that he could get rid of the pursuers. With the city in the sky falling, how could Hao Tianwang have the mood to chase after them? Hao Tianwang really didn't have the mood to chase after them. Blue veins appeared on his forehead, and he gritted his teeth. His hands seemed to be crushed by the city in the sky. Cracks had already appeared on the giant ice palm in the air, as if it would collapse at any moment. What are you waiting for? Come and help me. Hao Tianwang roared at King Wuling in annoyance. King Wuling seemed to wake up from a dream and also joined the team holding the city in the sky. Chapter 1702. Pairs of hands were holding up the Sky City, and it seemed that the Sky City was really being held up. However, when many people secretly felt lucky, everything changed again. Sky City slowly fell down again, and their arms felt like they were about to be crushed. Kacha! The huge palm condensed by Hao Tianwang was torn apart, turned into ice, and fell from the sky. Without the power of Hao Tianwang, how could the others hold up the Sky City? Whoosh! Almost instantly, the speed of the Sky City's fall increased greatly, and many people's arms were broken on the spot. Screams and exclamations sounded one after another. If this continued, these people would definitely be crushed into meat patties by the Sky City. Hao Tianwang gritted his teeth and shouted, Retreat! With an order, he took the lead and flew into the distance. The others did not dare to stay, and flew in all directions in a daze, not wanting to be crushed into meat patties by the Sky City. Without the power to lift, the Sky City was like a wild horse out of control, and like a meteorite falling from the sky, It fell to the ground with a whoosh. The people on the Sky City were shocked and screamed again, finally realizing that a great danger was coming. Even if they were cultivators, if they fell with the Sky City, the huge impact was enough to destroy their internal organs. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Figures flew up from the Sky City one by one, standing in the air, watching the Sky City fall with pale faces. The people in the Imperial City had long been frightened, and after coming to their senses, they fled in all directions. On the contrary, outside the Imperial City, the people at the lowest level watched this scene in high spirits. They never thought that they would be able to see such a scene in their lifetime. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the earth shook. The Sky City hit the ground like a meteorite. The earth seemed to have an earthquake, and dust was raised all over the sky. A huge pit appeared in the Imperial City, and even the places that were not hit quickly collapsed and fell apart. The Sky City was destroyed, and so was the Imperial City. Hao Tianwang's base camp, which he had operated for so many years, was destroyed. Hao Tianwang's dignity was destroyed along with this. Hao Tianwang stood in the air, his face alternating between red and white. It was extremely terrifying as he stared fixedly at this scene. His mood was extremely complicated. This was the most painful Waterloo of his life. After this battle, everything he had built up before collapsed with a loud bang. He wanted to kill. Ah! He looked up to the sky and let out a long howl. The air in all directions quickly condensed and soon turned into ice. Those who were too close to him were frozen and died on the spot. Everyone retreated in panic. Even King Wu Ling did not dare to get involved. He was afraid that it would be too late. No one dared to dissuade him. They were all trembling with fear. They were all fully aware of the fury in Hao Tianwang's heart. Someone stealthily looked in the direction where the Kuan-Peng flew away. Unknowingly, the huge body of the Kuan-Peng had disappeared. However, King Wuling knew very well that the Kuan-Peng must have become smaller, so he couldn't find it at all. Perhaps they were hiding in some corner, watching this scene with schadenfreude. Indeed, this was the case. Above the 9 heavens, in a huge cloud, the somersault cloud was hiding there. The few of them stood on the cloud and looked down at everything below. The Kuan-Peng had changed greatly. It was like a bird, held in Xiaobai's hand. Xiaobai couldn't hide his surprise and said, "Master, this is not a destructive blow to this group of traders, but it will definitely make them unable to recover in a short period of time." Tang Zhang nodded in agreement. After this battle, Hao Tianwang's vitality will be greatly damaged. He won't have the energy to target us at all. We can also temporarily recuperate and gradually grow stronger. Xiaobai rolled his eyes and said worriedly, "What if Hao Tianwang is too angry and leads his troops to attack us? What should we do?" Tang Zhang chuckled and said, "If he really does that, then he must be out of his mind. This time, it's not as simple as destroying the Sky City and the Imperial City. It's a fatal blow to his dignity. If he attacks us without caring about anything, do you believe that his backyard will be on fire?" Xiaobai's eyes lit up and he seemed to be deep in thought. Tang Zheng added, "In fact, Hao Tianwang's rule is not as firm as we thought. Perhaps because of his guilty conscience, he has been implementing high-pressure policies. The ordinary residents of Sky Beyond are living in an abyss of suffering. They only fear Hao Tianwang and don't dare to fight back. It's different now. This destructive blow will definitely spread throughout Sky Beyond. Those who have long been dissatisfied with Hao Tianwang will definitely take advantage of the situation. Many people will also know that the royal family has returned and is powerful. Perhaps many people will even seek refuge with you. Hao Tianwang must reorganize his backyard and rebuild his prestige. Only then will he have the time to deal with us." After listening to Tang Zheng's analysis, Xiaobai was deep in thought. Finally, he came to a realization and exclaimed excitedly, "Master is really amazing. Your analysis is so thorough. This is really an unexpected surprise. I didn't expect that in order to find the Kuan-Peng, he would give Hao Tianwang such a heavy blow." As he spoke, he looked down at the Kuan-Peng and couldn't help but have a strong hope for it. "Let's go, no need to look. Let's go back to the barbarian land first." Tang Zhang rode the somersault cloud, mixed in with other clouds, and quietly left. Wherever they passed, many people stopped and looked in the direction of the Sky Palace City. The Sky City was suspended in mid-air. Even if it was far away, it could be seen clearly. Whenever someone had the thought of rebelling, They would look up at the Sky City in the distance and suppress this thought. They never expected that the Sky City would crash in front of everyone's eyes. This great news spread quickly and spread to even farther places in Sky Beyond. The thought of rebelling in people's hearts unconsciously ignited again. This time, it was no longer suppressed. Instead, it spread rapidly like a spark starting a prairie fire. The elites of Sky Beyond were basically concentrated in the Imperial City in Sky Beyond, but it didn't mean that there were no elite masters among the people. The saying that masters were among the people was not only applicable to the human world, but also to Sky Beyond. Many elite masters hid among the people, unwilling to work for Hao Tianwang. These elites began to contact each other, and the fire of revolution quietly burned. Tang Zheng witnessed all this, but he wasn't surprised. This was because, in the history of the human world, this scene had played out countless times. Xiao Bai was seeing this for the first time in his life. He couldn't help but wave his fists excitedly. This was Sky Beyond, his home, and it was quietly changing. Master, when I go back, I'll join forces with these people. There's strength in numbers. If we fight against Hao Tianwang together, our chances of winning will be higher. Xiao Bai said excitedly. You can do that, but you also have to be careful. The people are mixed in with the honest folk, and there are also many who have bad intentions. These people must be strictly guarded against and can't mix into our team. Otherwise, there will be endless troubles in the future. Tang Zheng gave Xiao Bai a dose of precaution. Xiao Bai didn't think so much. He nodded thoughtfully and said, "Thank you for your advice, Master. With Master in charge, the rascals won't be able to succeed." Tang Zheng shook his head and patted Xiao Bai's shoulder, saying, "Xiao Bai, this is your home. You are their emperor. You have to stand at the forefront." Ah! Chapter 1703. Xiao Bai came back to his senses and asked blankly, "Master, what do you mean? You fought for all of this, so of course you're the one standing at the front." Tang Zheng knew Xiao Bai's intentions and said patiently, "Xiao Bai, Sky Beyond Heaven is your home. These people trust you the most, do you understand?" "But I believe in you, Master," Xiao Bai said stubbornly. Tang Zheng shook his head and said, "Wait until Sky Beyond Heaven stabilizes, then I will leave. After that, everything will depend on you." Xiao Bai's expression darkened. He was not afraid of fighting alone, but was used to having Tang Zheng by his side. He said worriedly, "Master, without you, how can we defeat that traitor?" Tang Zheng encouraged him, "Xiao Bai, you have to believe in yourself. You are far stronger than you think. You will definitely defeat Hao Tianwang. You have to have confidence." Xiao Bai hung his head dejectedly. "Xiao Bai, pull yourself together. You are a descendant of the imperial family, the emperor of countless people in Sky Beyond Heaven. Do you understand? Do you want to disappoint me?" Tang Zheng's expression darkened as he sternly reprimanded him. Xiao Bai raised his head and bit his lips. Seeing Tang Zheng's encouraging expression, confidence slowly spread from the bottom of his heart. Finally, he nodded heavily and said, "Master, I will not disappoint you." Tang Zheng smiled with gratification. When the somersault cloud arrived at the wildlands, many people came forward to welcome it. They saw the familiar somersault cloud from afar. They were both expectant and worried, afraid that something bad would happen. Yi Dingdang, Wu, and Lu Qingmei stood at the front of the group. The three of them were the most worried about Tang Zheng. Although they knew that Tang Zheng's cultivation was strong, the enemy was also strong. Success or failure was completely unpredictable. In mid-air, Tang Zheng saw them. He tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and soared into the air. He descended from the sky and gently landed in front of the three people. The three of them excitedly rushed forward and hung onto Tang Zheng's body. "Ha ha!" Tang Zheng laughed loudly and hugged the three of them tightly. He patted their backs and comforted them. "I'm an unkillable cockroach. Why are you so worried about me?" Yi Dingdang angrily punched him and said, "You're not worried at all. You made the three of us so worried that we couldn't sleep." "Yes, it's my fault. This time is too special. I'll definitely bring you guys along next time." Tang Zheng quickly surrendered. The three of them rolled their eyes at him and said, "That's more like it." After pausing for a moment, he hurriedly asked, "What's the outcome?" The somersault cloud landed on the savage lands. Xiao Bai, the four symbols, and the Shura all disembarked. They immediately attracted the attention of everyone. Not many people noticed that Xiaobai was carrying the Kuan Peng. That was because it was too different from the image in everyone's mind. It was too easy to overlook. The Grandmaster hurriedly went to Xiaobai's side and sized him up. He didn't find any injuries. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. "Grandmaster, don't worry. I'm fine." Xiaobai smiled. Seeing that the four of them had returned safely, everyone was concerned about the success or failure of the mission. Yi Dingdang repeatedly asked. Tang Zheng didn't keep them in suspense. He pointed at the Kuan Peng and said, "Isn't this the result?" Swoosh. Immediately, all eyes focused on the Kuan Peng. Not knowing what was going on, Yi Dingdang asked doubtfully, "Is this Xiaobai's new pet?" Pet. Tang Zheng and Xiaobai laughed at the same time. Tang Zheng pointed at the Kuan Peng and said, "Everyone look carefully. What exactly is it?" The Grandmaster cried out in surprise. "Kuan Peng." "Ha ha, Grandmaster has sharp eyes. You guessed right. It is the Kuan Peng." Xiaobai couldn't hide his excitement as he said. Everyone was shocked. They had seen the Kuan Peng's huge body. It was completely different from this little thing. How could this be the Kuan Peng? But when they looked carefully, other than the size, it was very similar to the Kuan Peng. It really is the Kuan Peng. Everyone turned pale with fright as they gradually accepted this reality. How did the Kuan Peng become like this? Everyone had this question in their hearts. Tang Zheng signaled to Xiaobai. Xiaobai understood and explained, "The Kuan Peng can change its size." The Grandmaster asked doubtfully, "But in my memory, the Kuan Peng can't change its size." That was in the past. After the Kuan Peng was damaged and was repaired by Hao Tian Wang, it had the ability to change its size. Everyone suddenly understood. Tian Chanzi was more interested in the experience of this trip and quickly asked about it. Xiaobai had already been instructed by Tang Zheng and slowly explained. Although his words were simple, it quickly attracted the attention of the crowd. Everyone was overwhelmed with emotions, and their hearts were undulating. How much courage and strength was required to take the risk alone but still obtain a complete victory? Everyone could understand without even thinking about it. Especially the leaders of the righteous faction. They didn't know the purpose of Tang Zheng's trip. Only then did they know that they were pulling the tooth from the tiger's mouth. They actually took the Kuan Peng from Hao Tian Wang. How difficult was this? They were very clear about this since they were chased by Hao Tian Wang's subordinates all these years. But this mission was still successful. They didn't know what words to use to describe it. They could only praise it in their hearts. A leader asked curiously, "What's so special about the Kuan Peng that you have to take the risk?" Xiaobai explained, "The Kuan Peng is the foundation of the Outland. It's as important as the Tree of Life to the human world." At the mention of the Tree of Life, all the righteous factions suddenly understood. They might have heard of the legend of the Tree of Life. It was the key to the survival of a world. Suddenly, the eyes of the people looking at the Kuan Peng changed drastically. There was a trace of awe in their eyes. "What's the use of taking back the Kuan Peng?" someone asked. Xiaobai turned to look at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng nodded at Xiaobai. Xiaobai understood and patted the back of the Kuan Peng. He said, "Let's wait and see." On the way back, the two had already discussed the next action. Since these people asked, they might as well let everyone see and use this to completely intimidate them. The Kuan Peng had already been instructed. It rose into the air and flew towards the sky. At the same time, it rapidly changed. When it rose into the air, it had already turned into its real body. One couldn't see the end of it. It made people admire it. But many people didn't know what was going on. They looked at the Kuan Peng blankly. Only a few people had seen the Tree of Life turn the desert into an oasis. So their hearts were filled with anticipation. Many pairs of eyes were fixed on the Kuan Peng. A ray of light appeared on the Kuan Peng's body. This ray of light wasn't very strong, but it was full of vitality. The ray of light fell from the sky and turned into countless raindrops, sprinkling on the wilderness. Chapter 1704. The sky full of light fell on the hard rocks of the barbarian land. Everyone looked at all this blankly, not knowing what would happen. Suddenly, a green grew out of the barbarian land. A blade of grass. Everyone exclaimed in disbelief. It was not surprising that a blade of grass grew in other places, but this was the barbarian land. Everything in the barbarian land could not grow. This was a well-known fact. It was said that there was once a powerful master who tried to change all this. In the end, he exhausted all his power and failed. Since then, no one dared to overestimate themselves. The scene in front of them gave everyone a profound lesson. It turned out that the barbarian land was not really a place where nothing could grow. It was just that the person who could do this was not an ordinary person. The rock. Everyone raised their heads to look at it, and were deeply shocked by its small demonstration of strength. The light completely merged into the bare rocks, and a little bit of green grew on the rocks. Gradually, more and more people exclaimed. Because there were not only blades of grass growing, but also other plants growing. The vitality gathered in the barbarian land, and the momentum became greater and greater, making the barbarian land look completely new. Many people were so excited that they danced. Wild Dog was one of them. He jumped up and down and was overflowing with excitement. Everyone knew very well that they would live in the barbarian land for a long time. The barbarian land full of vitality was much better than the barbarian land full of death. Would this place become a paradise, or a home? Many people could not help but have this idea. Several leaders looked at Xiaobai and Tang Zheng in awe. They had snatched food from the tiger's mouth. They had taken such an important rock from Hao Tian Wang, which was enough to prove their strength. But when they thought of this, many people felt gloomy and worried. They asked nervously, "The rock is so important, and you have destroyed the imperial city and the city in the sky. What if Hao Tian Wang leads troops to attack us? What should we do? We are still so weak. Can we resist?" Little White was full of confidence, and repeated the situation and interests that Tang Zhang had analyzed one by one. Several leaders fell into silence. In the end, they had to admit that Xiaobai was right. However, they were skeptical about the so-called rebellion in the outer heavens. After all, they had not experienced nearly 100 years of history in the human world. It was hard to imagine how powerful the combined forces of the weak could be. Xiaobai made a solemn vow, and they couldn't find a reason to refute it. They could only bitterly accept this reality. The appearance of the Kuan Peng cheered up everyone in the savage land. Their nervous minds became excited. The future was becoming brighter and brighter. For the next few days, Tang Zheng focused on teaching Xiaobai about celestial chess. Once he left, the heavenly chess would be taken over by Xiaobai. Unfortunately, they would not be able to absorb the vast and mighty power of the stars in the heavenly chess. In the past few days, Tang Zheng had absorbed quite a bit of star energy. The power of the stars in the heavens beyond heaven was actually denser than the power of the mortal world, which benefited him greatly. His power had increased tremendously. He had already been at the 7th grade of the Mahayana realm for some time, but he did not expect to break through too quickly. After all, the higher the cultivation, the harder it was to break through. Unless one had a great opportunity like Xiaobai, they would not be able to make such a huge breakthrough in such a short period of time. Tang Zheng was calm. He was not in a hurry. In addition, his pure yang force was only temporarily under control, and was not truly dissolved. If he broke through his cultivation too quickly, the pure yang force would explosively increase. Whether or not the current balance would be maintained would be a problem. Xiaobai's comprehension ability was extremely strong. Although it had only been a few days, he had already gradually comprehended many of the essence of the heavenly chess. Although he was unable to set up the heavenly chess by himself, it was more than enough to control the existing heavenly chess. Xiaobai gradually understood the heavenly chess, and only then did he truly realize the extraordinariness and greatness of the heavenly chess, and could not help but have greater confidence in the future. Before leaving, Tang Zheng found Yi Yuan. He decided to leave the witch clan in the sky beyond heaven, as there were even more challenges and opportunities here. Although it was filled with danger, it was of great use to the growth of the witch clan. Speaking of which, the relationship between the witch clan and Xiaobai was not shallow, so it was reasonable for them to stay by Xiaobai's side. After listening to Tang Zheng's arrangements, although Yi Yuan wanted to stay by Tang Zheng's side and work for him, he was a righteous person and understood Tang Zheng's good intentions, so he naturally did not object. As a result, there were a lot of people who came this time, but there were very few people who returned. Only Yi Dingdang, the 3 girls, the Azura and the 4 symbols followed Tang Zheng back to the human world. Before they left, the wilderness was filled with people. In just a few days, Trees had already grown out of the wilderness. It was believed that before long, the wilderness would definitely turn into a lush forest. In addition, the Kuan Pang used its sacred art and obtained a few floating mountain peaks from somewhere. They floated above the wilderness, giving off a new atmosphere that was full of life. When everyone heard that Tang Zheng was going to leave, they all wanted to see how they would pass through the spatial gate. Many righteous path cultivators were expelled to the sky beyond heaven by the Great Array back then. Although they had personally experienced passing through the spatial gate, it was still in a hurry and they did not understand the profoundness of passing through the spatial gate. In addition, most of them were panicking, so how could they have the mood to observe? Tang Zheng and Yi Dingdang stepped on the somersault cloud and slowly flew up into the sky, waving goodbye one after another. Pairs of eyes were focused on them. Xiaobai couldn't help but shout, "Master, you must come back as soon as possible." Tang Zheng nodded slightly, his eyes filled with encouragement. Xiaobai was well aware of Tang Zheng's intentions, and said firmly, "Master, don't worry, I will definitely protect everything. When you return in the future, our team will be even stronger." In the past few days, Xiaobai had sent out many spies to take the initiative to investigate the situation in the sky beyond heaven. It seemed that as Tang Zheng had predicted, there was an undercurrent in the sky beyond heaven. It seemed that some people could not sit still and wanted to raise the flag of rebellion against Hao Tianwang. Their series of actions in the imperial city had spread to every corner of the sky beyond heaven, deeply shocking everyone. The spies took the opportunity to spread the news about the wilderness, letting everyone know that the former imperial family had returned and how powerful they were. What happened in the imperial city was the best evidence. Some people were already on their way to the wilderness, as if they wanted to seek refuge there. Everything was difficult at the beginning, but as long as the first shot was fired, the rest would follow naturally. Tian Chanzi's long-cherished wish had been fulfilled. He spent all his time thinking about how to make Kingsman stronger. After the decline of Kingsman day by day, many of the martial arts in the sect were lost. Tian Chanzi focused on organizing the great martial arts of his sect from 1,000 years ago, and then imparted them to his fellow disciples without holding anything back. He looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression and said loudly, "Tang Zheng, go back and tell my disciple Shusher to practice hard. The next time she comes to the sky beyond heaven, I will specially hold a grand ceremony for her to return to the sect. Also, take care of yourself, especially your pure yang energy. Young man, you have a lot of energy. Let the women around you share some of it." Tang Zheng could not help but laugh. Yi Dingdang and the other two glared at Heaven Monk in shame and anger, and urged, "Don't listen to this old fellow's nonsense. Let's hurry up and leave, otherwise, who knows what kind of absurd words he will say later." Whoosh. Chapter 1705. This was the first time Yi Dingdang, Wu and Lu Qingmei had personally passed through the spatial door. Last time, they were in Sumeru World and did not have the opportunity to experience all of this. Today it was very different. When they entered the spatial door, their eyes widened. However, the surroundings were dark and they could not see anything. They could not help but be disappointed. Before they could experience any extraordinary mysteries, their eyes suddenly opened up and they returned to the human world. Above the ninth heaven, a biting cold wind blew against their cheeks. Only then did they wake up. When they turned around, the spatial door had already closed. Yi Dingdang pouted and said faintly, "Why is it so fast? I didn't feel anything." Wu and Lu Qingmei nodded at the same time, their faces filled with regret. Tang Zheng laughed loudly. "Passing through space is just that. It is not as complicated and mysterious as you think." Lu Qingmei said, "That is for you. For us or others, this is an insurmountable gap. There will be a day when you can freely pass through the spatial door." Tang Zheng said with certainty. The place where they returned to the human world was actually not within their country. When they looked down, they actually passed through to another country. Whoosh! A fighter jet flew in front of them, startling them. Immediately after, Yi Dingdang excitedly jumped on the somersault cloud and said, "Wow, it's a fighter jet. Let's compete with it and see who is stronger." Tang Zheng helplessly rolled his eyes at her. She really wanted to see the world in chaos. Moreover, what was the point of this kind of adult bullying child game? Somersault cloud. Get rid of this iron lump. With a command, the somersault cloud increased its speed. Like a ray of light, it flew away from the fighter jet and disappeared from the radar in the blink of an eye. The pilot watched this scene with a pale face. His jaw was about to drop. This little farce only added a bit of fun. Yi Dingdang was not tired of it and excitedly said, "Next time I want to go to Sky Beyond Sky. Although it was boring when I passed through, there are many unknowns. It is too interesting." Tang Jing acted as if he did not hear. Lu Qingmei, on the other hand, couldn't take her eyes off the scenery below. Looking down from the sky, there was a kind of beauty that ordinary people couldn't appreciate. "We seem to have arrived at Anne's country," Lu Qingmei suddenly said. Yi Dingdang exclaimed in shock. "And I haven't seen her for a long time. She actually returned to China alone." As soon as he finished speaking, 3 pairs of eyes looked at Tang Zhang at the same time. Tang Zhang was baffled. He rubbed his nose and said, "Why are you looking at me like that?" Marshall, who had been silent all this time, said, "And leaving, doesn't that mean that there's no hope for her to stay by your side?" Tang Zhang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "What does that have to do with me? It would be strange if it had nothing to do with you," Yi Dingdang said mercilessly. Lu Qingmei and Marshall nodded together. Tang Zhang might as well not say anything. No matter what, it was his fault. Yi Dingdang rolled her eyes and said mischievously, "Why don't we go down and meet Anne? Speaking of which, I haven't been to her country yet." Lu Qingmei and Marshall hurriedly nodded in agreement. 3 against 1, Tang Zhang didn't have the chance to refute, and could only suppress the cloud. Many people on the ground saw a white cloud descend from the sky, and all of them opened their eyes wide in shock, looking at this miracle. After all, foreign countries were not like foreign countries. Most people did not know of the existence of cultivators, and were shocked by this scene. Especially when they saw 4 people jump down from the white cloud. Some of them even prostrated themselves on the ground, calling out to God and kowtowing. Yi Dingdang covered her mouth and snickered, saying, "This group of foreigners treat us as immortals. How interesting. Let's go, don't scare them." Tang Zhang pulled the 3 of them, and in the blink of an eye, they disappeared in front of everyone. Everything was like a dream. The few of them did not barge into the royal castle. Although they could quietly enter the castle, it would cause trouble for the royal family. Both sides were not enemies, so there was no need to do so. When they arrived at the castle, Anne was already waiting for them. She opened her eyes wide in surprise and stared straight at Tang Zhang, not concealing her feelings in the slightest. Anne was too happy. She was a princess, and who knew how many people wanted to get close to her? These people were all elites. However, goods would be lost if they were compared, and people would die if they were compared. These people compared to Tang Zhang. One was on the ground and the other was in the sky. There was simply no comparison. And had originally planned to forget about Tang Zhang, because she had no hope of having a place by Tang Zhang's side. She did not expect that after returning home, this kind of longing would not weaken, but instead become more and more intense. Especially under the pursuit of so many people, this kind of feeling was particularly strong. Even so, she resisted the idea of looking for Tang Zhang. After all, she was a princess and still had her own pride. She had tried her best, but in the end, it ended in failure. She really wanted to climb up and try again, but in front of Tang Zhang, she did not have the courage. All of this was because Tang Zhang was walking higher and higher, and the distance between them was getting farther and farther. She no longer dared to try again, and was pleasantly surprised as she went up to welcome them. When the 3 of them landed, the royal family had already known through special channels, and specially dressed up and came early to welcome them. She was a little nervous, not knowing if they would come to the castle. Now, it seemed that her wish had come true. They really did come. Yi Dingdang pushed Tang Zhang and said, "Her Highness the Princess is here to welcome you." "She's not welcoming me alone. We're all foils, you're the main character." Yi Dingdang laughed mischievously. In the past, she had strictly prevented other women from getting close to Tang Zhang, but it seemed that ever since his robbery power erupted last time, she had become much more open-minded. Wu and Lu Qingmei also looked at him with burning eyes. Seeing and walking in front of him, Tang Zhang could not remain indifferent. After all, this was her castle. With so many pairs of eyes watching, if he did not give her face, it would be too unreasonable. Tang Zhang smiled faintly. "And long time no see," and could not hold it in and excitedly hugged Tang Zhang, saying excitedly, "It's great that you can come." Immediately, The other three girls looked at Tang Zheng with more and more thought-provoking gazes. Tang Zheng could not help but roll his eyes and sensed the gazes of the other three girls and reluctantly left Tang Zheng's embrace. She then politely hugged the three of them and said, "Welcome to my home. Your home is so big." Yi Dingdang pointed to the magnificent castle and was used to it and said, "It's just a little bigger." Everyone knew that this was a modest way of saying it. The royal castle had a lot of history and had witnessed the rise and fall of the royal family. It was like a silent old man. "My royal father and mother have prepared a sumptuous banquet to welcome your arrival," and led the few of them into the castle. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 1706. At the end of the banquet, the host and guests enjoyed themselves to the fullest, and reluctantly left Tang Zheng and took the three girls to visit the castle. The king and Tang Zheng came to the highest point of the castle and looked at the night view of the city. There were not many tall buildings in this city. Instead, there were many short old buildings, which were completely different from the tall buildings in the country. The king observed the side of Tang Zheng's face. Speaking from the bottom of his heart, when they first met, he never would have thought that this young man would come to this step today. "Your Excellency, the other heads of the royal families of this continent are already on their way and will arrive tomorrow. I know that you like to keep a low profile, so this meeting will be kept secret," the king said. He was the king, but he called Tang Zheng Your Excellency, which was enough to show the status of Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was shocked. He was just passing by, but there was actually such a big commotion. "There is no need for this," the king said with a pleasant expression. "The news of your appearance has already spread throughout this continent through various secret channels, so they can't just sit and watch. During this period of time, everyone saw what happened to your country. That's why they couldn't wait to come here." Tang Zheng asked suspiciously, "What does this have to do with them?" The king smiled bitterly, thinking that you really don't know, or are you just pretending to be confused? But he explained earnestly, "Your Excellency and your subordinates are too powerful, enough to subvert them, so—" The king didn't finish, but his meaning was self-evident. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that these royal families were worried that he would kill his way into their country and subvert their rule. No wonder they couldn't wait to come here. Were they here to test his strength? Or were they here to ask for peace? Wasn't this like the ancient times when all the countries came to court? The king's thoughts were far more complicated than Tang Zheng's, but he was also secretly glad that he had a good daughter who had formed a relationship with Tang Zheng early on. Although they didn't have a good relationship, their relationship was at least closer than the other royal families. This gave them an opportunity, so they weren't as anxious as the other royal families. Now his status was rising, and he was in the limelight among the many royal families. Those who didn't get along with him usually had to be on good terms with him. The king enjoyed it too much. They're really worried for nothing. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a mocking smile. The king's heart skipped a beat, and he asked, "Don't tell me you don't have any plans for this continent?" Thoughts? What was so good about this continent? Could it be compared to the heavenly realm? Of course not. Since that was the case, he might as well properly develop the heaven realm. That was his foundation and he could control it. The king could not read Tang Zheng's mind and looked at him anxiously. Tang Zheng was not in a hurry to explain everything. He deliberately mystified and said, "This continent is actually not bad." The king's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Tang Zheng in horror, subconsciously thinking that he had some ideas about this continent. If someone else had said this, or if it had been said in the past, he would definitely have scoffed. This was simply condescending. However, the more he learned about the situation, the more he understood that Tang Zheng was not being arrogant. He really did have the ability to do so. The king said anxiously, "Then what are you going to do?" "That will depend on what they do tomorrow," Tang Zheng said mysteriously. The king's heart sank, but he kept comforting himself. According to the relationship between and Tang Zheng, he probably wouldn't do anything to this country, right? Although he said this, the king still did not have any confidence. He waited until everyone else returned to their rooms to rest before calling and alone to the study, and was immersed in joy and did not notice her father's worry. She casually asked, "What's the matter? My dear daughter, do you know what Tang Zheng thinks about our country?" The king asked directly, and was confused and asked, "What does he think about our country?" "My silly daughter. The king lovingly stroked her head. His heart moved, and he simply changed the topic, saying, "Is it really impossible between you and him?" Anne's face flushed red as she stammered, "I don't know. You are my daughter. What are you being so shy about? This is not your style. If you like someone, then do your best to chase him. I don't believe that my woman can't chase him." The king encouraged, and guiltily said, "But he is too outstanding. The women around him are also outstanding." "Daughter, you are also very outstanding." Anne raised her head and looked at the king with uncertainty and asked, "Do I really have a chance?" "Of course you have a chance." Anne seemed to have gathered her fighting spirit again. The king remembered something that was occasionally mentioned at the dinner table and warned, "Don't forget about your master, Tian Chanzi." From what they said, Tian Chanzi went to another world. Although I don't really understand the meaning of this sentence, you have a reason to go back. You haven't finished your studies yet, so how can you leave your master? This way you can continue to stay by his side and avoid any awkwardness. Anne's heart moved and she was eager to give it a try. "I will make it clear to Tang Zheng. You don't need to appear. I guarantee that he won't be able to find a reason to decline," the king said confidently. And didn't refuse. The corners of her mouth hooked up into a smile. In the darkness of the night, it was captivating. The next day, the sun was high in the sky. Several luxurious planes landed at the airport. Then, one by one, the luxurious motorcade drove into the royal castle. Although the king said that he would keep a low profile, how could the royal family stay low profile when traveling? The news of the royal family gathering seemed to have grown wings and flew into the ears of many people. Combined with the news of Tang Zheng descending from the sky yesterday, how could the various powers not understand that they were here for Tang Zheng? Immediately, everyone was filled with curiosity about this meeting. They didn't know what kind of sparks would be created or what kind of conclusion would be made. Would the situation of the world change because of this? In the castle, Tang Zheng sat firmly in his chair. The reception was handled by the king. In any case, he wasn't familiar with these royal family members. This time, most of the people who came had prominent statuses. With a single order, some corner of the world would tremble. Some of the guests were the king himself, while some were core members of the royal family. Without exception, no one dared to look down on them. Tang Zheng sat firmly on the fishing platform. He looked at the endless stream of people with an expressionless face. And sat beside him. She leaned over and said intimately, "Don't look at them on the surface. In fact, they are very guilty." Tang Zheng's mouth twitched. He squeezed out a wry smile. And didn't hold back at all. She hit the nail on the head. The other royal family members looked at the intimate appearance of Tang Zheng and Anne and couldn't help but cast envious gazes. They weren't envious of Tang Zheng's good luck with women. Instead, they were envious of and for being so close to Tang Zheng. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moonlight first, making countless people envious. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 1707. Yi Dingdang and the other two girls did not come out. They hid in the shadows and watched the grand scene with interest. Of course, most of their attention was on Tang Zheng and Anne. Seeing the two of them whispering with their heads down, Yi Dingdang asked, "Don't you think the two of them are a good match?" Lu Qingmei and Marshall stared at her at the same time with a strange expression. "Why are you looking at me like that? I was just casually saying it." Yi Dingdang shrugged and lightly said, "Look at the members of the royal family. They must be thinking the same thing. They think the two of them are a couple." Marshall coldly said, "Yi Dingdang, don't tell me you don't think there are enough women around him?" Yi Dingdang laughed. "Of course I don't. It's best if I monopolize him." "Your appetite is not small," Marshall said. Yi Dingdang was not embarrassed at all and straightforwardly said, "Don't tell me you haven't thought about it? It's just that we are forced by reality and can't do it." Lu Qingmei faintly sighed, speechless. Yi Dingdang mischievously stared at Lu Qingmei and said, "Teacher Lu, do you think I'm right?" Seeing her point out the teacher's identity, Lu Qingmei's ears turned red. She angrily said, "Didn't I tell you not to call me teacher? A teacher for a day, a teacher for life." Yi Dingdang deliberately teased. Lu Qingmei knew that Yi Dingdang had a sharp tongue, so she did not bother with her. Not to mention the three girls teasing each other, The royal families of the various countries also gathered together and whispered to each other. Some of them even boldly went to greet Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was neither cold nor warm as he responded with a few words. Luckily, he had Annie by his side to act as the introducer as she enthusiastically introduced the newcomer. All the members of the imperial family took their seats. Anne's father also sat on his throne. He took a deep look at Tang Zheng and acted according to the countermeasures discussed last night. Only to hear him say with full vigor, "In this beautiful season, all of you have come from afar. On behalf of the royal family, I sincerely welcome all of you to this beautiful country." A long official speech was delivered, but almost no one was in the mood to listen. They were either openly or covertly looking at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was as still as a pine tree, and the old king also acted as if he did not see it. Anyway, he finished his long-winded speech, paused for a moment and said, "Everyone is very clear about the purpose of your visit. I can't make a decision on this matter, so I need everyone to gather together and brainstorm." No one said anything, but all eyes were focused on Tang Zheng. The old king was well aware. He smiled and said, "Of course, this matter is not completely up to all of you to decide. The main decision lies in the hands of the esteemed Mr. Tang Zheng." The old king spoke bluntly and did not leave any face for the royal family. When the royal family heard this, although their faces were bright red with embarrassment, they could not refute. The old king made an inviting gesture to Tang Zheng and said, "I know everyone is eager to know the answer, so now, Mr. Tang Zheng will speak." Clap, clap, clap. Applause rang out like a tide. Tang Zheng did not move, nor did he wait for the applause to stop. He said in a clear voice, "If I were to attack your country, how confident are you that you can stop me?" The moment he opened his mouth, it was earth-shattering and heaven-shattering. He wouldn't rest until he shocked everyone to death, causing everyone's hearts to rise. The old king and An looked at each other. They did not expect Tang Zheng to be so straightforward and direct, catching everyone off guard. Actually, Tang Zheng did not want to waste time. Instead of fighting and scheming with the royal family, it was better to go home and spend time with his family and loved ones. The royal family members looked at each other, not knowing how to answer for a moment. They were all very particular about being reserved. One sentence would be broken into 10 sentences, making it ambiguous and difficult for others to figure it out. Tang Zheng did not rush them. He crossed his legs and leaned back comfortably in his chair. And the others looked at him with shining eyes. Just one sentence had stunned everyone. Who else in the world could do this? No head of state could do this. "Mr. Tang Zheng, you are too arrogant and conceited. You are looking down on us." Someone stood up and retorted. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and said, "Since you think I am arrogant, you can leave on your own. No one will stop you." That person's expression froze. His aura disappeared and he sat back down dispiritedly. The others looked at each other, not daring to show any disrespect. They all asked the old king for help. After all, he was the host and had a close relationship with Tang Zheng. Everyone hoped that he would put in a good word for them on account of their past relationship. The old king obviously knew what these people were thinking, but he looked down as if he did not see them at all. This made everyone even more depressed. "Are you really going to attack our country?" Someone could not help but ask. "If someone is disobedient, there is no harm in beating them up." Tang Zheng said lightly, "If we join forces, you may not be able to defeat us with your strength." Someone said unconvinced. They were really suppressed by Tang Zheng's aura and wanted to turn the tables. Tang Zheng chuckled and encouraged, "Then you can give it a try. In the future, we will see who wins and who loses." They were the royal family. They had a large family business with hundreds of thousands of years of history. How could they dare to bet with Tang Zheng? None of them dared to make such a huge bet. With just a few words, all the royal family members were speechless. They looked at each other in dismay, not knowing what to do. When Yi Ding-dang and the other two saw this scene, their gazes became infatuated. This was their lover, who was able to fight against the royal family by himself. Where could they find this kind of man? It was a great honor for them to be able to accompany him. Who knew how many women in the world were willing to do this but did not have the chance? What do you think the royal family will do? Yi Ding-dang asked curiously. Lu Qingmei analyzed. They will definitely compromise. This is their only choice. Wu nodded in agreement. In the face of absolute strength, any identity, schemes and methods are all useless and useless. As if to confirm her words, a member of the royal family said, "Then what are you going to do? Or, do you have any conditions?" On the negotiating table, everything can be discussed. Tang Zheng straightened his body and leaned forward slightly. A majestic aura gushed out from him, causing everyone's expression to change greatly and making it difficult for them to breathe. These royal family members were usually very imposing, but in front of Tang Zheng, they were like babies facing a giant. They did not have any aura at all and were instead suppressed to the point that they could not speak. This is not a negotiation. There are no conditions to be discussed. You just need to remember my words. Tang Zheng's voice was like thunder on the ground, causing everyone's mind to be greatly shaken. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1708. The members of the royal family were greatly shocked, but they had no way to refute. They could only stare blankly at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng ignored their feelings and said bluntly, "First, the things that you stole from my motherland in the past will be returned to you. Furthermore, you will pay for what you did back then." Tang Zheng did not even have the time to say the second condition before everyone seemed to explode into discussion. These old countries were imperialists in the past. They plundered who knew how much Wuxia's resources. Many antiques and national treasures entered their national museums and were proudly displayed to the world. They also took a lot of gold and silver to enrich their national coffers. Tang Zheng had not thought about this before. He did not expect that they would take the initiative to walk into the knife's edge. In that case, he might as well get rid of them altogether. "Spit out what you ate from me, and return what you took from me." None of the royal families expected Tang Zheng to propose such a condition. It was too harsh. If they really did that, it would be a slap to their own faces. Not only would the royal family lose face, but the country's dignity would also be greatly reduced. The resentment of the people would definitely boil. Tang Zheng did not care whether or not the people in their country would boil with resentment. When they plundered Wuxia back then, they had not thought about the people of Wuxia. "Can we change the condition?" someone asked weakly. "Change the condition?" Tang Zheng laughed coldly. "I just finished speaking. Did you forget? Looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson." His expression darkened. The members of the royal family felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their chests. They could not breathe at all. Some of the weaker ones directly rolled their eyes. The old king and Anne were exceptions. The two of them did not feel this pressure and looked at each other in horror. The old king was not as worried as the royal family. In every world war they were neutral countries. Therefore, they had never invaded Wuxia and did not need to worry about this. However, he understood the feelings of the other royal families. In this way, the royal family's reputation would be completely ruined. This move was like hitting a snake where it hurt the most. After this battle, the prestige of the imperial family would be swept away. It would be very difficult for them to rise again in the future. They could only abide by the law and manage their own territory. A moment later, Tang Zheng removed the pressure, and everyone felt their bodies relax, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. They gasped for breath, and no one dared to refute. Secondly, in terms of international cooperation, your country is not allowed to make things difficult for our country. When it comes to international affairs, our country is the leader. You are not allowed to treat the Wuxia people in your country as second-class citizens, Tang Zheng added, following Wuxia's lead. These few words gave the members of the royal family a headache. Didn't this mean that they could only be underlings in the future? No one wanted to be a lackey for the rest of their lives. Tang Zheng saw through their thoughts and sneered. "You don't want to, right? Then I'll imitate your actions of setting up concessions in my country. I'll also set up a few concessions in your country." No. The members of the royal family shook their heads like a rattledrum. Compared to this condition, it seemed that Tang Zheng's proposal was not so difficult to accept. "I only have these two conditions. If you agree, everyone will be safe. If you don't, then I'm sorry, I can't guarantee what will happen tomorrow. Anyway, I have a lot of free time these few days. I don't mind exercising my muscles." Tang Zheng moved his body, and his joints made cracking sounds. The members of the royal family were ashen. After hesitating for a long time they said, "We'll go back and think about it." There's no time for you to think about it. Give me your answer now. Do you agree or not? It's simple and straightforward. There's no need to be so wishy-washy. Tang Zheng refused directly. The members of the royal family were speechless. Tang Zheng stood up and said, I'm hungry. Wait for me to have dinner. If you don't give me an answer, then I'll take it as a no. After that, he left without looking back, completely ignoring the members of the royal family who were staring at each other, and hurriedly got up and chased after him. The members of the royal family immediately surrounded the old king and began talking at the same time. The old king was chased and intercepted. He was miserable beyond words and could only smile wryly. Tang Zheng had thrown down the equivalent of an atomic bomb. The old king was relaxed and didn't care about anything, but he was suffering. Although that was the case, the smile in the depths of the old king's eyes showed that he enjoyed this feeling. At the very least, those members of the royal family who usually didn't put him in their eyes had no choice but to flatter him, and looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. These two conditions of yours will definitely cause an earthquake. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. They know very well how they treated my motherland back then. Now, it's time for them to pay their debts. There's an old saying in my motherland, it's not that they won't pay it back, it's just that it's not time yet. If they hadn't done these bad things and planted the seeds, they wouldn't have to swallow the bitter fruit today. And nodded as if she understood. Her expression dimmed slightly. What about my country? What are you going to do? Tang Zheng stopped and said, Your country didn't do those bad things. Of course, you don't have to worry. Anne's heart relaxed. Thank you. Finished speaking, she stood on her tiptoes and kissed Tang Zheng on the cheek. Tang Zheng stared blankly as he unconsciously touched his face. Yo, they kissed just like that. Yi Dingdong's voice rang out. The three girls walked over together, and felt shy in her heart, but she pretended to be calm. Aya, did we disturb your good time? Yi Dingdang glanced at Tang Zheng and teased. Tang Zheng rolled his eyes innocently. This had nothing to do with him. She was the one who took the initiative to kiss him. Wu and Lu Qingmei also looked at Tang Zheng meaningfully. He felt that he wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River, so he simply didn't explain. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat first. He deliberately touched his stomach and said, Who are you trying to fool? You won't be hungry even if you don't eat for a few months. Yi Dingdang directly exposed him. Lu Qingmei didn't want Tang Zheng to continue to suffer. She changed the topic and said, What you said just now was too good. What you did was too good. These powers invaded us in the past. Today, we will make them pay back with interest. Wu also nodded heavily. Back then, many martial seniors fought for our country in the invasion. Heroes sacrificed themselves in exchange for our current life. By doing this, you can be considered to have fulfilled the wishes of those seniors. Tang Zheng sighed with emotion. When I was studying history, I saw the invasion and humiliation of my country. I wished I could travel back to that magnificent era and fight for my country. This time, it just so happened that it was a coincidence. Although we can't travel back in time, we can still make up for it. Yi Dingdang abhorred evil. She said empathetically, So we all agree that what you did was too good. Then we won't pursue your womanizing. Tang Zheng's head was filled with black lines, and hurriedly changed the topic and said, Will they agree to your conditions? The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth raised as he gave an unfathomable smile. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 1709. Once again, Tang Zheng returned to the royal family. Pairs of eyes were focused on him. Compared to his calm expression, these royal family members hung their heads dejectedly with bitter expressions that were uglier than crying. Seeing this reaction, Tang Zheng and An looked at each other, already having an answer in their hearts. Have you all decided? The corners of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up slightly as he asked directly. I agree. One of the royal family members replied resentfully. I agree too. Another royal family member hesitated for a moment before squeezing out a sentence with difficulty. I agree too. Immediately, a tide of voices rose and fell. All of them agreed, and not a single one of them disagreed. And looked at Tang Zheng in shock. She had thought that there would still be objections, but unexpectedly, there was not a single one. Tang Zhang had used his own strength to intimidate them all. The old king's heart was also filled with mixed feelings. He was one of the parties involved and had been blocked by all the royal family members just now, so he was very clear about their thoughts. It had to be said that in order to maintain their status, the royal family had no choice but to agree to this condition even if it meant losing face. He secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, his ancestors had not invaded Wuxia. Otherwise, his mood would be no different from everyone else's at this moment. Without a doubt, because of Tang Zheng's decision, the world structure would change. Many people had already realized that this was no longer the original world. Tang Zheng looked around with satisfaction and said, "This is your way of making up for the mistakes of your ancestors. Why are you crying? You should be happy. Come, smile." How could anyone smile? Their hearts were filled with mixed feelings. Not crying was already a great effort. And looked at this comical scene and could not help but laugh. This caused the others to glare at her angrily. However, when they saw Tang Zheng beside her, they resentfully withdrew their gazes. The royal family members had come with hope but left with grievances. They did not dare to stay for another minute, afraid that Tang Zheng would raise additional conditions. If that happened, they would really cry. After settling these matters, Tang Zheng did not stay any longer. He leaped onto the somersault cloud and soared into the sky. When the people in the royal castle saw this scene, their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. The old king couldn't help but feel proud of his wise decision again. On the somersault cloud, and kept waving goodbye to her family and hometown. The old king spent a lot of effort to find a good excuse to push his daughter out. Tang Zheng really wanted to refuse, but he couldn't find a reason to. In the end, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. And had helped him auction off so many rare treasures, which was also a great merit. He couldn't just abandon her after using them all up. And gathered her emotions and looked around curiously. She said in surprise, "This somersault cloud is amazing. It's soft and fluffy like cotton candy, but it won't make me fall." No one responded to her for a long time. She looked around and found that Yi Dingdang, Lu Qingmei, and Wu were all looking at her with strange expressions. "What's the matter?" and asked. Yi Dingdang wished she could find a piece of tofu to kill herself with. She had suddenly decided to have Mo land in Anne's country. She never expected that and would actually go back with them. Although the castle was very selfless, it was because they thought that Anne and Tang Zheng were impossible. But when the old king found a good excuse and brought up Tian Chanzi, she immediately realized that she had lifted a rock only to drop it on her own feet. How could they not see through the old king's intentions? He clearly wanted to set up Tang Zheng and Anne. The key point was that they couldn't find a reason to refuse, which made them very angry. Yi Dingdang suffered a loss and had nowhere to vent her anger. She could only viciously pinch Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng grinned, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. How could Tang Zheng not understand Yi Dingdang's intentions? But he was really wronged. He didn't do anything. Wasn't all of this caused by her? Yi Dingdang also knew that she was in the wrong. She resentfully stood at the edge of the somersault cloud and watched the scenery below fly by like flickering lights and passing shadows. Seeing that the atmosphere was somewhat awkward, Lu Qingmei broke the silence and said, "In the future, you should ride the somersault cloud a few more times. You'll get used to it." And smiled sweetly and looked at Tang Zheng affectionately. She didn't feel the slightest bit of awkwardness and said, "Tang Zheng, then I'll have to trouble you in the future." Ever since they got on the somersault cloud, Anne's enthusiasm burst forth once again. Her originally silent heart was once again restless. Tang Zheng resentfully nodded. Seeing that the atmosphere was becoming more and more awkward, he hurriedly urged the somersault cloud to speed up their return home. Early in the morning, when the first ray of sunlight shone on the capital, the somersault cloud quietly landed in the villa. The witch tribe elder hurriedly went up to welcome them. During this period, he didn't dare to slack off at all. He personally went up to take on the heavy responsibility of patrolling. When he saw the few people walking down from the somersault cloud, the witch tribe elder stretched his neck and looked around. However, he didn't see anyone else, especially the figures of the many witch tribe members. The elder's heart thumped. Tang Zheng was as thin as a strand of hair. He immediately noticed that something was wrong with the elder and hurriedly comforted him. "Elder, don't worry. They're all safe. I left them in the sky beyond." The space there is more spacious and it's suitable for them to display their skills. Only then did the elder feel relieved. The news of Tang Zheng's return quickly spread throughout the villa. Everyone walked out and excitedly saw that they had returned safe and sound. They were even more curious about the experience in the sky beyond. Feng Shishir grabbed Yi Dingdang and the two of them started to whisper. Feng Shishir's face was full of surprise and envy. When the others heard this, their reactions were similar. They couldn't wait to see the sky beyond. Of course, when they heard about the dangers in the sky beyond, they couldn't help but hold their breaths. Their hearts seemed to have stopped beating. Seeing Yi Dingdang chattering, Tang Zheng was happy and relaxed. His gaze swept across the crowd and sized everyone up. Everyone had changed too much. Almost everyone had undergone earth-shattering changes. Their cultivation and aura were completely different from before. The wall-breaking golden elixir. His heart skipped a beat. He had already figured out what was going on. He had already exorcised everyone's inner demons. Their cultivation was already twice as fast with half the effort. In addition, with the help of the wall-breaking golden elixir, their speed was like a rocket. His gaze first fell on Nana because she had changed the most. In the past, the Empyrean fairy had fed her many pills and planted a solid foundation of jealousy. Furthermore, she was still a child. Her heart was pure and she didn't have any distracting thoughts. After exorcising her inner demons, with the help of the wall-breaking golden elixir, she truly soared into the sky. Before Tang Zheng left, she was only at the 9th stage Yuanying stage. Now she had broken through the huge threshold between the Yuanying stage and the soul formation stage and reached the 2nd stage of the soul formation stage. Gasp! He sucked in a breath of cold air. His gaze fell on Mu Hongyan, who was beside Nana. Mu Hongyan was much inferior to her daughter, but she had also broken through to the Yuanying stage. What about Feng Shishir? She stared at Feng Shishir, who seemed to have sensed something. She quickly turned her head and their eyes met. 6th stage Yuanying stage. She was taught by Tian Chanzi and started cultivating very early. However, she was surpassed by Nana and Linger. Cultivation required talent. Her talent was indeed not as good as Nana and Linger. She was able to reach her current level of cultivation because of her hard work and the results of various opportunities. When Tang Zheng's gaze fell on his grandfather, his face lit up. Tang Dahai was already very old. He cultivated purely to strengthen his body. However, he was also at the golden elixir stage. He was strong and didn't look like an old man at all. Umo looked around, but there was no sign of Linger or Li Xiaotian. Linger must still be busy with her own business. As for Li Xiaotian, Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. He remembered that Li Xiaotian went to the heavenly gate to find the Empyrean fairy. He didn't know what happened. To read the latest novel, please visit the website. Chapter 17:10. After everyone finished catching up and listening to the soul-stirring journey of the sky beyond heaven, they were unable to calm down for a long time. Only then did Tang Zheng have the time to ask about the whereabouts of Linger and Li Xiaotian. As he expected, Linger was busy filming and her feet were not touching the ground. How could she have time to come back? As for Li Xiaotian, everyone was silent. After she went to the gate of heaven, there was no news of her and she did not return. No one knew what happened. Wu and Li Xiaotian had competed for so many years and understood Li Xiaotian very well. She said in a deep voice, "This is not normal. We have been in the sky beyond heaven for so long. Logically speaking, Li Xiaotian should have gone to the gate of heaven." Tang Zheng thought for a while and admitted that Wu's words were reasonable. He said, "What about the Li Palace? Did they not send people to look for Li Xiaotian when there was no news of her?" Feng Shishir obviously knew the inside story and explained, "Of course the Li Palace sent people to look for her, but the location of the gate of heaven is uncertain. Back then, with Fu Yao leading the way, you all arrived smoothly. Now we are like headless flies. How could it be so easy to find the gate of heaven?" Tang Zheng looked deeply at Feng Shishir and recalled the scene when he first arrived at the gate of heaven. He said, "The gate of heaven is indeed not that easy to find. Moreover, when we left the gate of heaven, Yan Qingyi sealed the gate of heaven. When Fu Yao went to the gate of heaven, she must have opened the seal. Even so, with Li Xiaotian's cultivation, she may not be able to truly step into the gate of heaven." His heart sank as he realized that he had overlooked a very important point. When Li Xiaotian went to the gate of heaven to look for the Empyrean fairy, Fu Yao, he should have stopped her. Now that her whereabouts were unknown and the danger was unpredictable, he could not sit idly by. Sure. Are you in contact with the Li Palace now? Tang Jing asked. Feng Sure nodded. Most of the people in charge of the family had left, and the others had their own responsibilities. Of course, she had to stand up and take on the burden. Then contact the Li Palace and have them send out everyone to see if they can find Li Xiaotian's whereabouts. If not, I'm afraid I'll have to make a trip to the Heaven Gate. Tang Jing said. Because of Li Xiaotian's disappearance, the happy atmosphere of the reunion was broken, and many people's mood became heavy. Li Xiaotian had an eccentric temperament and behaved in an unruly manner, but he gradually integrated into the big family. In particular, she had risked her life to save Tang Zheng several times when he was in danger. These actions had helped her win the recognition and respect of everyone. Now that her whereabouts were unknown, it naturally affected everyone's nerves. For the next 2 days, Tang Zheng waited at home for news from Li Xiaotian. However, what he did not receive was news from the government. The royal family took action and closely contacted the government of Wuxia, indicating that they wanted to return the treasures that had been plundered in the past. This confused the government, who thought it was a conspiracy of the other party. After some investigation, they finally figured out some clues. It turned out that all of this was because of Tang Zheng. The government was both emotional and grateful, so they sent people to contact Tang Zheng to express their gratitude. Unfortunately, Tang Zheng's thoughts were all on Li Xiaotian. He did not see the government and did not intend to get involved in the following matters. The government understood Tang Zheng's attitude and all of them admired him. Although Tang Zheng had conflicts with the government before, that was all in the past. Many people were still worried that Tang Zheng would do something out of line now that he was so powerful. Now it seemed that this worry was superfluous. Judging from his behavior, he was a very patriotic person and would not betray his country. However, when the news that several major countries were returning various national treasures was made public, the world was in an uproar. The people of Wuxia were so excited that it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Wuxia's national prestige was unprecedentedly high. From the government to the people, everyone was of one mind, looking forward to the national treasures returning to the motherland. The whole country celebrated, but the villa was gloomy. The Li Palace finally sent back news that Li Xiaotian had indeed disappeared. I'll go to the gate of heaven. Tang Zheng made a prompt decision. He was afraid that Li Xiaotian would have an accident if this dragged on. No one objected to this decision. Moreover, the Empyrean fairy was still in the gate of heaven. If he could find her on this trip, then the danger of Tang Zheng's 9-yang saint body exploding would be resolved. I want to go too. I want to see Master. Nana could not wait to express her position. She did not give Tang Zheng a chance to refute and said, I've already grown up. I have the strength to protect myself. I definitely won't cause trouble for everyone. Nana had indeed changed a lot compared to before. Compared to children of the same age, she was like heaven and earth. She was a full head taller, with long arms and legs. Her skin was white and delicate. Tang Zheng saw that the others were also looking forward to it. In the end, Tang Zheng's gaze fell on Feng Sure and said, Sure, you go too. This trip to the gate of heaven should not take too long. It won't be as long as going to the sky beyond heaven. This was clearly to make up for the regret of Feng Sure not going to the sky beyond heaven. Naturally, no one objected. Although the others also wanted to go, they tactfully did not fight with Feng Sure for this opportunity. Feng Sure was pleasantly surprised. Tang Zheng had taken the initiative to let her participate. This meant that the hard work of staying at home was not in vain. This time, there were many people guarding at home. There was almost no threat in this world, so there was nothing to worry about. The three of them immediately sat on the somersault cloud and soared into the sky, flying towards the south. In the Sea of Death, the somersault cloud lowered its altitude. It almost brushed the surface of the sea as it flew, stirring up waves of water. This sea could no longer be called the Sea of Death because there were no longer those silent ancient ships and ghostly skeletons. When the gate of heaven opened, the Sea of Death had completely changed. In addition, Yan Qingyi had sealed the gate of heaven. Tang Zheng still remembered Yan Qingyi's solemn vow that other than her, No one else could think of breaking the seal and approaching the gate of heaven. Tang Zheng believed her at that time. However, as his cultivation increased, he did not take this to heart. Moreover, the Emperor of Heaven's soul was traveling with the Empyrean fairy, so he was even less worried about the seal. After all, the gate of heaven was the Emperor of Heaven's territory. Of course, he had a way to break the seal. That day, Tang Zheng saw the gate of heaven in the sea with his own eyes. Now that the sea was vast, where could they find the gate of heaven? In the past, there was an entrance to the sea. Now, the situation had changed completely. Even the entrance to the sea was gone. Feng Shishir stared blankly at the boundless sea and asked, "How do we find the gate of heaven?" Nana also stared straight at Tang Zheng and said, "Brother, hurry up and find the gate of heaven. I really want to see Master." Tang Zheng pondered for a while and soared into the air. He floated on the sea and stretched out his hands. The sea seemed to boil as drops of water flew up from the surface. After a while, the sky was filled with water droplets that lingered around Tang Zheng. A mysterious force merged with these water droplets. Whoosh! Like a heavy downpour, these water droplets fell on the surface of the sea. However, they did not merge with the sea. Instead, they quickly fell into the depths of the sea. Chapter 17:11. The water droplets merged into the sea, and like a series of detectors, they displayed everything on the seabed clearly in Tang Zheng's mind. Feng Shishir and Nana looked at him curiously, their faces full of anticipation. The water droplets were extremely fast, and they quickly scouted out the situation on the seabed. Finally, he found his target. An island was floating on the seabed, like a submarine. Most importantly, the island seemed to be enveloped by a huge bubble, and the seawater did not seep into every corner. The island seemed to be another world, and the seawater around it did not fit in. The Heavenly Gate! Tang Zheng exclaimed in his mind, and immediately recognized it. Back then, the Heavenly Gate had sunk to the seabed, and it was still here, but in the deep sea. He would not have been able to find it if he was not as sure as he was. The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy must have reached the Heavenly Gate. So why didn't they bring this island to the surface? Tang Zheng could not guess the answer, but he decided to bring the island to the surface first, so that he could find Li Xiaotian and the Empyrean Fairy more easily. There was no trace of the huge Heavenly Gate, and this was because of the seal set up by Yan Qingyi, which made the Heavenly Gate disappear without a trace. Even if they reached the island, they would not be able to find the Heavenly Gate. The seal formation is still here. Could it be that the Empyrean Fairy did not break the seal and enter the Heavenly Gate? Tang Zheng was shocked by this thought. The Heavenly Gate was built by the Fu family, and the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean Fairy were traveling together. So how could they not break Yan Qingyi's seal? No matter what the truth is, I have to find a way to bring the island to the surface first. He immediately used the sky-swallowing technique, and a huge black hole appeared on the surface of the sea. Boom! With a loud sound, the seawater was like a giant beast, soaring into the sky and being completely sucked into the black hole. In an instant, a huge vacuum appeared in the sea, and all the seawater was sucked into the black hole, revealing the island in the deep sea. Feng Shishir and Nana looked at this scene in horror, their eyes wide open. Is this the gate of heaven? Nana muttered to herself. The gate of heaven is on this island. Wait for me to suck this island up. The might of the sky-devouring technique increased greatly, and the island was completely enveloped by this power. It slowly flew up like a huge moving fortress, gradually approaching the three of them. When the island completely flew to sea level, Tang Zheng quickly stopped circulating his energy. With a rumbling sound, the seawater in all directions surged and filled up the vacuum at the bottom of the sea, and the island floated on the surface of the water. Looking at the fruits of his labor, Tang Zheng grinned. There must be another way for this island to surface, but he was too lazy to look for it. He might as well use brute force to pull it out of the water. It was a different approach, but the result was the same. In the end, he achieved his goal. After a long time, Feng Shishir saw this island again, and couldn't help but be filled with emotions. However, she soon found something strange. Looking down from above, she could see everything on the island, but she didn't see the tall gate of heaven. She couldn't help but ask, "Where's the gate of heaven?" The gate of heaven is still sealed and hasn't appeared. I suspect that they didn't break Yan Qingyi's seal, Tang Zheng said solemnly. Feng Shisher understood, but found it hard to believe. She said, "How is that possible? The Gate of Heaven is an important place for the Fu clan. Even if Fu Yao can't do anything, the heavens and earth should have a way to break the seal." Tang Zheng shook his head. He couldn't figure out the mystery either. He said, "Let's go to the island first to find out." The three of them landed on the island. The island was quiet, and there was a sense of oppression. Luckily, they weren't ordinary people, so they didn't feel uncomfortable. Nana was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. She rushed to the front to scout the way. She was very lively and happy. "Didn't you find anything strange? The environment has changed a lot compared to the last time we were here." Feng Shisher looked around and said thoughtfully. Tang Zheng said solemnly, "It's not just changed a lot, it's completely different. If it was someone else, they would probably think that they came to the wrong place." "What's going on?" Feng Shisher asked curiously. Tang Zheng shook his head. "I can't figure it out either. Maybe we'll have the answer when we find the Gate of Heaven." Because everything on the island had changed, they couldn't find the Gate of Heaven based on their memories. After wandering around for half a day, they still couldn't find the Gate of Heaven. "I'm 100% sure that there's something strange in the Gate of Heaven. Maybe it has something to do with Yan Qingyi's seal," Tang Zheng said solemnly. "It has something to do with Yan Qingyi's seal?" Feng Shisher asked in surprise. Tang Zheng nodded. Ever since they returned from the Gate of Heaven, Yan Qingyi had undergone earth-shattering changes. In the end, she parted ways with Tang Zheng. Maybe Yan Qingyi's mind had changed when they were in the Gate of Heaven. She had once vowed that other than her, no one else could break the Gate of Heaven's seal. Now it seemed that her words had a deeper meaning. That seal was definitely not simple. There was definitely something strange about it. Tang Zheng clearly remembered that Yan Qingyi had casually placed a few stones beside the Gate of Heaven. Relying on the time and place, she had activated the seal. If we can find those stones, it won't be difficult to break the seal. Feng Shisher also remembered that scene and said, "Then let's hurry up and find the stones." They could only treat it as a living horse. Hearing that they were going to find the stones, Nana became excited and shouted, "Find the stones, find the stones." The three of them almost searched the entire island once, but they still couldn't find those stones. "Aya, I'm so stupid. Why do we need to personally find the stones? Don't we have the 4 symbols?" Just as they were at their wits' end, Tang Zheng slapped his head and suddenly had an idea. "For symbols, come out." Sumeru World flashed and the 4 symbols appeared in front of the 3 of them. He asked respectfully, "Master, what are your orders?" "For symbols, this island is sealed by a mysterious formation. The key point of this formation is a few stones. Think of a way to find these stones." Tang Zheng ordered. "Yes, Master." The 4 symbols accepted the order and stomped heavily on the ground. Then, he connected with the ground and became a part of the island. The stones on this island formed some kind of mysterious connection with him. The 3 of them looked at the 4 symbols expectantly. Nana tilted her head and stared with her big black eyes, asking, "Can he really do it?" Tang Zheng was full of confidence and said, "It's just a few stones. How can they stump the 4 symbols?" If he didn't have the 4 symbols, Tang Zheng wouldn't dare to make such a boast. However, the 4 symbols were different. Even Tang Zheng might not be completely aware of his mystical power. Rumble. The island trembled as if there was an earthquake. However, the 4 symbols closed their eyes tightly and didn't move in the slightest. "Don't panic," Tang Zheng comforted. Nana was fearless and calm, and Feng Shisher's expression was also calm. Finally, the 4 symbols opened their eyes. Their fingers rapidly pointed in several directions and a mysterious power shot out. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Another wave of tremors shook the mountain and earth, and soil flew everywhere. A few stones were uprooted from the ground and rushed out of the soil, exposing themselves to the few of them. The few of them were immediately attracted by these stones. Tang Zheng couldn't hold back his surprise and cheered, "Found it!" In the distance, those stones were the same as before. Weren't they what they were looking for? Chapter 17:12. The group arrived in front of the stone and observed it curiously. There was nothing special about the stone, but it was able to seal the gate of heaven. It was really hard to imagine. Will the seal be broken if we move these stones away? Nana asked on a whim. As soon as she finished speaking, she hugged a stone with both hands. Yeah. She used all her strength, but the stone did not move at all. This stone is so heavy. Nana resentfully released her hands and said disappointedly. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. How could it be that easy to break the seal? Brute force won't work. Nana pouted disappointedly and said, So boring. Feng Shishir had a difficult expression and said, For symbols, do you have a way? Four Symbols shook his head. I can't sense the gate of heaven at all, so naturally I don't know how to break the seal. Tang Zheng had already expected this and said with a faint smile. This seal came from Yan Qingyi's hands, so it must be related to the way of heaven. How could it be broken so easily? Let me see if I can use the way of heaven to break this seal. He still had something to say in his heart. Even the Empyrean fairy was nowhere to be found, which was enough to show how strange this array was. Brother, you can definitely do it. Hurry up and break this seal, so annoying. Nana puffed up her cheeks and said angrily. Tang Zheng closed his eyes and released the way of heaven that he had comprehended. In an instant, it was as if he was connected to the island, and every blade of grass and every tree became more lively. He was shocked to find that every blade of grass and every tree had a wave of energy. This wave of energy was one with the entire island and could not be distinguished from each other. But at a certain place on the island, the energy was the most concentrated. That wave of majestic energy was like a cloud, far from what the surrounding thin energy could compare to. This place is definitely where the gate of heaven is. I didn't think that I would need to use the way of heaven to find it. It is impossible to distinguish it with the naked eye. Whoosh! He took a step forward and stepped on the grass, rushing towards the cloud as if he was flying. The others did not know what was going on and hurriedly chased after him. When Tang Zheng stopped, he stared at the open space in front of him. With the naked eye, there was nothing but weeds on the ground. The others followed his gaze, their faces full of question marks. They did not know what attracted him so much. Here it is! Tang Zheng shouted and pushed out his palms, sending a steady stream of energy towards the cloud. There was no reaction. Like a clay ox entering the sea, the cloud was safe and sound. However, Tang Zheng's energy escaped his control and entered the cloud, becoming a part of the cloud. Ha! The energy of the cloud had become stronger. Strange, it's actually not afraid of attacks. This seal is really strange. He walked towards the cloud but stopped immediately because the cloud had shifted its position and was now 1,000 meters away. Transfer? Tang Zheng was aghast. He had a deeper understanding of the power of the seal. The gate of heaven was no longer fixed, but could move at will. How did this happen? Tang Zheng asked himself if he could do it. However, Yan Qingyi had done it so easily that day. It had to be said that her comprehension of the heavenly Tao was far beyond that of Tang Zheng. I'm going to fight you. Let's see if I can break your seal and open the gate of heaven. Tang Zheng gathered his strength and chased after the cloud. He pushed out a stream of energy and silently merged with the cloud. Don't you like to eat my power? Let's see how long you can eat it. Although Tang Zheng could sense all of this with the heavenly Tao, he could not use the heavenly Tao to break the seal. The Emperor of Heaven's comprehension of the heavenly Tao was definitely higher than his, but he did not succeed. After he tried, he decided not to embarrass himself. He might as well find another way. A majestic stream of energy rushed out from his palms and merged with the cloud. The cloud trembled as if it was about to move again. Don't even think about moving. The energy in Tang Zheng's hands continuously surged out, establishing a connection between the cloud and him. It was as if there was an additional link. The cloud tried to move, but it was firmly bound by this link. Haha, you're not omnipotent. Tang Zheng laughed, all the energy in his body gushing out. He was not afraid that his power would disappear. There were no external attacks here, he only needed to deal with the seal. Hua! In the heavenly realm, a stream of energy floated up from the Tree of Life and flew into the 9 heavens. Then, through Tang Zheng's arms, it entered the cloud. In an instant, the cloud trembled violently and could no longer hold on. It was like a fatty who had eaten too much and was still stuffing food into his stomach. Finally, he could not hold it anymore. Boom! With a loud sound, the cloud exploded. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of stones shattering rang out. The sealing stone was completely destroyed, and the seal was removed. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. It was actually the effect of the Tree of Life. If he had known earlier, he would have used the Tree of Life's energy in the heavenly realm to break the seal. Yan Qingyi was right. Other than her, it's almost impossible for others to break this seal. If it weren't for the help of the Tree of Life, I definitely wouldn't have been able to do it. No wonder the Empyrean Fairy and the Emperor of Heaven failed. Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not have time to sigh as his gaze was firmly fixed in front of him. After the cloud disappeared, a majestic stone gate stood in front of him. This was the Heavenly Gate. Compared to the Heavenly Gate, they were as small as ants. The others also saw the Heavenly Gate appear out of thin air and cheered. Especially the Heavenly Gate, who raised his neck as if his neck was about to break. He stared at the Heavenly Gate excitedly and curiously like an adult. This is the Heavenly Gate. Feng Shishir deliberately revisited the Heavenly Gate. When she saw the Heavenly Gate, she was reminded of the previous trip to the Heavenly Gate. Tang Zheng was the calmest. He walked step by step towards the Heavenly Gate. The four symbols took the lead and pressed their hands on the Heavenly Gate. With a creak, the Heavenly Gate slowly opened. In the past, the Heavenly Gate required the blood of the Fu clan to open, but this was not a problem for the four symbols. No matter how sturdy the Heavenly Gate was, he had a way to open it. There was a rumbling sound. The Heavenly Gate was completely opened. The group walked in with large strides. It was no different from before. Thus, they walked forward with ease. The Heavenly Gate no longer had that gloomy and cold feeling. Because the Yin Qi in the Heavenly Gate had almost completely disappeared. A ball of heavenly fire emerged from Tang Zheng's fingertips and floated above their heads, guiding them into the depths of the Heavenly Gate. Along the way, they did not see any traces of the Empyrean Fairy and Li Xiaotian. Everyone could not help but be shrouded in a shadow. Where on earth could they be? Since they did not break the seal, could they not be in the Heavenly Gate at all, but somewhere else? We may not find them if we continue to search like this. Feng Shishir analyzed. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment and shook his head firmly. I have a premonition that they are here. Master, I will look for them. The four symbols volunteered. They placed their hands on the rock wall and executed their divine arts. After a while, the four symbols cried out in surprise. Chapter 17:13. The four symbols cried out in surprise, as if they had found something. Four symbols, what did you find? Tang Zheng asked hurriedly. Master, I found traces of a few people, but I'm not sure if it's them. There's a mysterious energy blocking me, the four symbols said suspiciously. Tang Zheng's expression froze. The sealing formation had already disappeared, so how could there still be such a situation? Then where are they? Bring me to them quickly. Master, I can only sense them, but I may not be able to save them. What? Tang Zheng was shocked. Aren't they trapped in the Heaven Gate? How can there be no way to save them? The four symbols' face was a little masculine, and he shook his head resentfully. I don't know either. This feeling isn't very strong. I'll follow this feeling and see if I can get closer to them. All right, then hurry up and move, Tang Zheng urged, his brows tightly knitted together. What was the secret behind the sealing formation set up by Yan Qingyi? It was actually so strange. The four symbols quickly rushed forward, and Tang Zheng and the other two quickly followed. They gradually came to the deepest part of the Heaven Gate, and a weak Yin Qi pervaded the air. After the heavenly bed was destroyed, it could no longer be compared to before. The four symbols stopped in front of the statue of Fuxi, and stared at the statue with shining eyes, his expression changing slightly. What's the matter? Tang Zheng asked. The four symbols pointed at the statue of Fuxi, and said, They seem to be inside here. Inside the statue? The three of them were greatly shocked, especially Tang Zheng, who had seen the scene of the Fuxi statue imparting the heavenly book Tao intent. He understood even more clearly that this statue was extraordinary, and it was the ancestor of the Fu clan, so he could not be the slightest bit negligent. Tang Zheng stared at the statue of Fuxi in a daze, as if he was weighing the pros and cons. This statue was not big, but it could imprison 3 people. There was probably something else about this statue. Master, do you want me to destroy it? The 4 symbols asked. Tang Zheng pondered for a moment, and shook his head. Let me check it out first. His palm pressed against the Fuxi statue, but there was no longer any mysterious power rippling out from it. Tang Zheng activated the heavenly book, and the mysterious power of the heavenly Tao entered the statue of Fuxi from his palm. Immediately, the statue of Fuxi glowed. Master, my senses have become even stronger. They are indeed within this statue. The 4 symbols cried out in alarm. Tang Zheng was overjoyed and tried his best to activate the heavenly book. The light from the statue of Fuxi grew stronger and stronger. Tang Zheng also sensed a few familiar auras. Fu Yao! Li Xiaotian! Tang Zheng exclaimed to himself. He finally confirmed that what the 4 symbols said was true. Even if the 4 symbols were far away, he could sense them with his own supernatural power. However, Tang Zheng had to come into contact with the statues and activate the ancient scroll of the heavenly tomes to achieve this effect. He immediately locked onto these auras. They seemed to be in another world, faintly discernible. He tried to follow this connection and save them, but found that it was not so easy. For symbols, if we work together, do you have the confidence to save them? Tang Zheng asked. The 4 symbols said without hesitation, with Master here, I have the confidence. Good. Then let's activate together. There is a universe inside this statue, and there is another small space. They are sealed in that small space. We have to forcibly save them from that small space, Tang Zheng analyzed. The others suddenly understood. It seemed that the formation that Yan Qingyi laid down was actually one with the statue of Fuxi. The intruders were directly sealed in the statue. If it was not for Tang Zheng, who knew how long they would have been sealed, just thinking about it made them shudder. Yan Qingyi's methods were really powerful. The 4 symbols nodded to show that they understood. Tang Zheng activated the spatial laws at the same time. Since this involved another space, although it was not as big as the space between the sky beyond heaven and the heaven realm, the spatial laws were still connected. Whoosh! The light on Fuxi's statue became brighter and brighter. It even covered the light of the heavenly fire floating above its head. A few pairs of eyes stared at the statue. Suddenly, a circle of ripples spread out from the statue. These ripples became more and more intense, like the surface of a lake where a stone was thrown. So dazzling! Suddenly, Feng Shishir and Nana closed their eyes at the same time. The light was too dazzling, and it hurt their eyes. When they opened their eyes again, the light disappeared, and 2 people were standing in front of them. Li Xiaotian! Master! 2 cries of surprise sounded. Nana flew into the arms of one of them. It was the Empyrean fairy, Fu Yao. The other person was Li Xiaotian. The 2 of them were still in a daze. When they heard the cries of surprise, they seemed to wake up from a dream. Their eyes gradually lit up. The Empyrean fairy stretched out her hands and hugged Nan Nan. Nan Nan rubbed her cheeks intimately, giggling and making a fuss. Tang Zheng and the 4 symbols stopped at the same time. The 2 of them worked together and used their divine abilities to finally save the 2 of them. Tang Zheng looked at the 2 of them in surprise and said with lingering fear, "Congratulations to the 2 of you for escaping. This was really scary. If it wasn't for the 4 symbols, I wouldn't have been able to find you." Normal people revered Fuxi's statue and would not dare to use their skills to test the statue. That would be a great disrespect. Only people who were not from the Fu clan would dare to be so daring. If it wasn't for this, they definitely wouldn't have found out that there was a universe inside the statue. Li Xiaotian also saw Tang Zheng. He revealed a guilty expression and said resentfully, "Tang Zheng, I'm sorry. I didn't help you. Instead, I let you take the risk and come to Heaven's Gate." Tang Zheng felt relieved and also became happy. He held Li Xiaotian's hand and said, "Why say such silly things? You did it to save me. You should be the one who worked hard." The corners of Li Xiaotian's mouth curled up, and her cold face changed. Tang Zheng turned to look at the Empyrean fairy. She looked angry and said to herself, "Yan Qingyi, you dare to play tricks with us and set up such a seal. I'm not done with you." The mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens rarely lost her composure like this. This greatly shocked the other 3. Tang Zheng was also very angry and said, Yan Qingyi likes to play tricks. She sealed Heaven's Gate in front of our eyes but fooled everyone. We didn't even discover the true power of the seal. He paused and asked, Fu Yao, where is the Emperor of Heaven? Has he been reborn? This was the Empyrean Fairy's true purpose for coming here. Hearing this question, Fu Yao's attention was immediately attracted. She revealed a hesitant expression and resentfully said, We were sealed here when we just came to Heaven's Gate. Father didn't have time to test it. Then where is the Emperor of Heaven? He remembered that the Emperor of Heaven's soul was kept in a container. He didn't know how it was now. Fu Yao took out a jade bottle and called, Father, you can come out now. However, there was no reaction from the jade bottle. It was as if the Emperor of Heaven wasn't inside. Tang Zheng and the Empyrean Fairy's expressions changed at the same time. They stared at the bottle with shining eyes. They didn't feel the soul tremble. This meant that the Emperor of Heaven's soul was no longer inside. Then where did the Emperor of Heaven go? Chapter 17:14. The Emperor of Heaven's spirit had been temporarily residing in the porcelain bottle, and the Empyrean Fairy had been carrying it with her all this time. Why was there suddenly no response? Tang Zheng said in bewilderment, The Emperor of Heaven's spirit is not in the porcelain bottle. The Empyrean Fairy was at a loss for words and said, I remember that he was always in there. How could he have disappeared? Don't look for him, I'm here. Suddenly, the Emperor of Heaven's voice rang out, giving everyone a fright. They hurriedly turned their heads and looked in the direction of the voice's origin. The Fuxi statue. Several pairs of eyes stared fixedly at the Fuxi statue. The Emperor of Heaven's voice actually came from inside. The few of them were dumbfounded. Everyone else had already come out, so how could the Emperor of Heaven be left inside? Don't be surprised, I'm just a strand of spirit. There's no way I can compare to your physical bodies, so I didn't succeed in escaping. The Emperor of Heaven comforted them. The Empyrean Fairy hurriedly rushed over and grabbed the statue's arm, saying, Father, then how can we save you? Everyone listened attentively and guessed that this was a big problem. Haha, who said I was going to get out? The Emperor of Heaven laughed loudly. Immediately, everyone was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Tang Zheng was deep in thought. The Emperor of Heaven's words had a hidden meaning, and it probably wasn't that simple. He hurriedly asked, Emperor of Heaven, could it be that you found something in the Fuxi statue? The Emperor of Heaven praised, Tang Zheng, you're really smart. I haven't even said anything, but you've already guessed a little. Empyrean Fairy knew her father very well and gradually understood that things were not as simple as he thought. She asked, Father, what is going on? We only know that this statue is a memorial to ancestor Fuxi, but we don't know the origins of this statue. Furthermore, for countless years, no one in the Fu clan dared to disrespect the ancestor statue, so naturally, we wouldn't be able to find out that there was another world within the statue. Everyone secretly nodded. If it wasn't for the four symbols' divine ability, no one would have guessed that they were completely sealed in Fuxi's statue. The Emperor of Heaven continued, This statue was actually carved by ancestor Fuxi himself. He nourished the statue with his blood, day after day, year after year. Even now, the statue still contains ancestor Fuxi's blood. Unless you enter the statue, you won't be able to discover this. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Although no one was very clear about what Fuxi's blood meant, they could still guess a little. It was really hard to predict what kind of divine ability a statue nourished by Fuxi's blood would have. Because of the ancestor's blood, this statue has already undergone a tremendous change. It is no longer an inanimate object. The Emperor of Heaven added. Everyone was still in awe of the great power of Fuxi's blood when Tang Zheng's heart trembled. He asked in surprise, Could it be that this statue can be used as a body? Your reaction is very fast. You're right, this can already be used as a body. The Emperor of Heaven said with certainty. Only then did the others finally react. They stared at the statue in disbelief. No one would have thought that the statue would actually become a body. This was definitely because of Fuxi's blood, and it was the result of countless years. The Empyrean Fairy said in surprise, Doesn't that mean, Father, you can use the ancestor statue as a body? The father and daughter had always wanted to find the most suitable body for the Emperor of Heaven. Unfortunately, this matter was too difficult. After so long, they still hadn't succeeded. Now, with Fuxi's statue in front of them, wasn't it the best body? The ancestor's statue is used by the Fu clan to worship the ancestor. If I take it for myself, wouldn't it be disrespectful to the ancestor and let down the Fu clan? Fuxi said with some apprehension. The Empyrean fairy immediately fell silent. As a member of the Fu clan, she understood her father's thoughts very well. Tang Zheng laughed and said, "Your thinking is too conservative. You don't know how to draw inferences from one case." Hearing this, everyone looked at Tang Zheng suspiciously. They didn't know what he was up to. Tang Zheng explained, "Other than the two of you, who else is in the Fu clan?" The Empyrean fairy's expression tensed up. She didn't know how to answer. "Don't keep us in suspense. The Fu clan is only left with us father and daughter," the Emperor of Heaven replied. "Then it's settled. The Fu clan is only left with the two of you. Who else can we let down?" Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and asked. "This?" The Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean fairy were speechless for a moment. Tang Zheng didn't give them a chance to argue and added, "Also, who is Senior Fuxi? He is the first Emperor of Heaven. His abilities must be far superior to yours, right?" "Of course," the Emperor of Heaven replied without hesitation. Tang Zheng spread his hands and said, "Then that's incredible. Senior Fuxi purposely used his blood to nourish the statue. Maybe he had a deep intention. What if he predicted that there would be a use for the statue in the future? That's why he did this?" These words enlightened the Emperor of Heaven and the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up. She stared at Tang Zheng and said, "Are you serious?" "I think that it's very possible. Senior Fuxi's every move definitely has a deep meaning. We can't rule out this possibility," Tang Zheng said. The Empyrean fairy nervously asked the Emperor of Heaven, "Father, what do you think?" The Emperor of Heaven was silent. He seemed to be digesting this news. Everyone also stared at the statue without blinking, waiting for the Emperor of Heaven's answer. After a long time, the Emperor of Heaven finally opened his mouth and said, "Tang Zheng, it's not impossible." Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "Then it's fine. What's there to be conflicted about? This isn't disrespect to Senior Fuxi at all. It's just fulfilling his last wish. This is true respect to Senior Fuxi." In truth, Tang Zheng wasn't speaking nonsense. This was because it really was possible. The Emperor of Heaven wasn't so easily fooled. He naturally understood this point, which was why he agreed with his father's words. The Empyrean fairy was delighted and said, "Doesn't that mean father can use this body?" "I can give it a try." The Emperor of Heaven didn't hesitate any longer. It was impossible for him to find a second body that was so suitable. "Then let's start quickly," the Empyrean fairy urged. Okay. The Emperor of Heaven immediately began to try to fuse his spirit with this special body. Tang Zheng's thoughts drifted. This was too unexpected. The sealing formation set up by Yan Qingyi actually sealed the intruder into the statue of Fuxi. Didn't that mean that the statue of Fuxi was also connected to the sealing formation? Indeed, the sealing formation was connected to the Gate of Heaven. The foundation of the Gate of Heaven was the statue of Fuxi. This meant that the sealing formation was also connected to the statue of Fuxi. When the sealing formation was activated, there was a universe within the statue of Fuxi. It just so happened that it reached some kind of tacit understanding with the formation. Naturally, the intruder was sucked into the statue. Bang! Suddenly, a muffled sound came from within the statue of Fuxi, interrupting Tang Zheng's thoughts. The Empyrean fairy asked anxiously, "Father, did you succeed?" "I failed," the Emperor of Heaven replied dejectedly. Chapter 17:15. Failed. Everyone turned pale with fright as they found it hard to believe this result. The Emperor of Heaven actually failed? This was hard to imagine. They couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. The Empyrean fairy asked, "Father, how did you fail?" The Emperor of Heaven said regretfully, "Although the ancestor statue is the most perfect body, it is not as simple as I thought it would be to fuse my soul with the body." "Why do you say that?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. "The ancestor's statue contains the ancestor's blood after all and has the ancestor's characteristics. It can't help but repel the external soul, so I can't fuse with it. The Emperor of Heaven sighed with emotion. It was clear that victory was in sight, but in the end, everything was in vain. Fuxi's blood. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that the problem was here. He asked thoughtfully, if the power of Fuxi's blood is suppressed, will you be able to successfully fuse with the body? The Emperor of Heaven did not make any guarantees and said with suspicion, I can try. After pausing for a moment he said, the main point is how to suppress the ancestor's blood. This is not an easy thing to do. There will always be a way. Tang Zheng shrugged and did not back down. He suddenly had an idea and said, Ancestor Fuxi comprehended the heavenly Tao. I wonder if the heavenly Tao has any effect on his blood. The Emperor of Heaven was enlightened and praised, this is a good idea. He was blinded and only wanted to use all his strength to fuse with the statue. He did not think of using the heavenly Tao to suppress Fuxi's blood. I'm starting. Tang Zheng called out and activated the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao immediately enveloped the statue. After a long time, he felt that there was a sign of flowing in the statue. Is this Fuxi's blood? Yes. The Emperor of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. He did not know when, but he had already successfully communicated with the Emperor of Heaven. Then let me see if I can suppress this Fuxi's blood. Tang Zheng did feel a rebound from the blood. When his heavenly Tao came into contact with the blood, the rebound was even stronger. Ha! Was the heavenly Tao useless? I don't believe it. Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and desperately activated the heavenly Tao. An earth-shattering power enveloped Fuxi's blood, attempting to suppress it with a decisive advantage. The rebound effect of Fuxi's blood was indeed reduced. Before Tang Zheng could rejoice, the rebounding force suddenly increased. This meant that the heavenly Tao had truly lost its effect. Emperor of Heaven looked at this scene in horror. He originally thought that the chances of success were very high, but now it seemed that both he and Tang Zheng were wrong. Tang Zheng furrowed his brows and racked his brains. Everything in the world had its own counter. Although Fuxi's blood was powerful, there was always something that could suppress it. There was no doubt about it. It was just that he had not found something that could suppress everything. Fuxi's blood. Fuxi's blood. Suddenly, Tang Zheng had a flash of inspiration. It was as if a bolt of lightning had struck his mind. Qi Yu's blood. These 4 words popped up in his mind. The effect of Qi Yu's blood was self-evident. It was just that Tang Zheng had not thought of it for a while. Now he felt that this method was more and more feasible. Thus, he immediately forced out a drop of Qi Yu's blood from Qi Yu's heart. The fresh blood gathered at his fingertip. It was bright red and had a mysterious aura. Whoosh! Tang Zheng flicked his finger, and Qi Yu's blood flew onto the statue. It quickly merged into the statue and disappeared. In the next moment, Tang Zheng clearly sensed that Qi Yu's blood had seeped into the statue and met Fuxi's blood. Qi Yu's blood flew out from his body. His senses were connected to Qi Yu's blood. Qi Yu's blood was equivalent to his eyes, allowing him to see the inside of the statue. As soon as the 2 streams of blood met, there was no need for Tang Zheng to guide them. They were like 2 enemies that could not tolerate each other. They fiercely collided and attacked each other. What are you doing? The Emperor of Heaven was imprisoned in the statue, and knew all of this like the back of his hand. He was overwhelmed with shock. He would never have dreamed of such a scene. Tang Zheng said indifferently, don't dawdle. When Fuxi's blood is suppressed, take the opportunity to merge with the statue. If you miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you won't have another one in the future. The Emperor of Heaven's heart trembled. He did not dare to ask any more questions, nor did he dare to dawdle. He hurriedly made full preparations. The 2 streams of blood fought back and forth. One moment the east wind suppressed the west wind, and the next moment the west wind suppressed the east wind. However, Fuxi's blood had nourished the statue for so many years, so it had lost a lot of its power. In the end, Fuxi's blood was unable to withstand the continuous attacks of Qi Yu's blood and gradually showed signs of decline. The Emperor of Heaven acted according to the situation. He had been waiting for a heaven-sent opportunity, so he immediately took action. His soul quickly merged with his body, and there was no more rebound from Fuxi's blood. The Emperor of Heaven was overjoyed. He did not dare to lower his guard and quickly consolidated this sign. The statue and Fuxi's blood complemented each other. When the statue was merged with the Emperor of Heaven, it was equivalent to him taking it for himself. Fuxi's blood was also greatly affected and its power was sharply reduced. Qi Yu's blood took advantage of the situation and crazily attacked Fuxi's blood. Fuxi's blood quickly retreated and tried to escape, but it was immediately surrounded by Qi Yu's blood. There was no way to escape. Qi Yu's blood came with great momentum and swallowed Fuxi's blood. The two streams of blood merged together and their power was great. So, a bright drop of blood flew out from the statue. This was the result of the fusion of the two streams of blood. Tang Zheng stared at this drop of blood and felt a surge of energy from it. It far surpassed Qi Yu's blood. After all, this was the result of the fusion of the two streams of blood. The blood flew straight towards Tang Zheng, giving him a fright. Before he could dodge, the blood flew into his heart. Boom! The blood returned to Qi Yu's heart, but in the next second, a surge of energy exploded. It was like an atomic bomb had been thrown into a lake. His body immediately became abnormal. He groaned. He was really hurt by this sudden change, but he still gritted his teeth and endured it. He hurriedly circulated his energy, and all kinds of divine abilities began to circulate on their own. The energy was immediately pacified, and it was no longer a great flood. Instead, it became a small stream that flowed along his 8 extraordinary meridians and turned into pure true qi. He could no longer control whether the Emperor of Heaven could completely merge with the statue. Therefore, he simply closed his eyes and immersed his mind completely into his body. There was more and more vital qi. It was simply rising crazily. One had to know that he was originally at the 7th stage of the Mahayana realm. The amount of vital qi stored in his body was unimaginable. However, his vital qi was still rising crazily, which was enough to show the huge energy of Fuxi's blood. Chapter 17-16. The others were astonished to see Tang Zheng's transformation. Feng Shishir was concerned about Tang Zheng and wanted to ask about it, but she was stopped by the Empyrean fairy. Don't disturb him. His true qi is changing rapidly and might change. Once these words were spoken, everyone could not be clearer. They were pleasantly surprised as they stared at Tang Zheng with burning eyes. They already understood that his realm would most likely change again. Everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation. Of course, the Empyrean fairy's gaze never left the statue. She wondered if her father's soul had fused with the statue. Suddenly, the statue's eyes shone with a certain radiance and vitality. The Empyrean fairy's eyes lit up and her heart surged. She shouted excitedly, "Father, is that you?" The statue suddenly replied, "It's me." Wah! The Empyrean fairy's little heart felt like it was about to explode. She was bursting with joy as she flew towards the statue and cheered, "Father, you've succeeded! You've succeeded!" At this moment, she was no longer the icy Empyrean fairy. Instead, she had become a sincere daughter. The statue lowered its head. It was no longer a lifeless statue. The statue had already fused with the Emperor of Heaven's soul. This was the Emperor of Heaven. The Emperor of Heaven lovingly stroked his daughter's hair and said, "Yao, Father has finally succeeded." The Empyrean fairy cried tears of joy. This journey had been too difficult. The ups and downs were truly torturous. The Empyrean fairy nodded repeatedly and said, "Father, your daughter will never be separated from you again." The Emperor of Heaven nodded with a gratified smile. "Your father will definitely protect you well and won't let you come to any harm." The others were pleasantly surprised to see this scene. What the Heavenly Emperor was unable to accomplish, he succeeded with Tang Zheng's help. This was enough to show how powerful Tang Zheng was. The others felt honored. Nana raised her tender face and said, "Big brother is so powerful. He's even more powerful than him." He pointed his little finger at the Emperor of Heaven. Feng Shishir's heart tightened. She knew a little about the Emperor of Heaven's temper. If Nana said that to him, he would probably be angry. Unexpectedly, the Emperor of Heaven didn't get angry. He laughed involuntarily and said, "Little girl, you're right. In some aspects, this kid is indeed very powerful. He has even surpassed me." Nana was beaming with joy as she proudly raised her head and said, "Of course, he's my brother." Li Xiaotian frowned and asked, "Senior Emperor of Heaven, is Tang Zheng's change good or bad?" The Emperor of Heaven's gaze fell on Tang Zheng. His expression became somewhat complicated as he sighed with emotion. This kid's luck is really enviable. Ha! As soon as he said this, everyone understood the meaning behind his words. If even the Emperor of Heaven was envious, then Tang Zheng's change must be good. As expected, the Emperor of Heaven continued. He has absorbed the ancestors' blood. The energy contained in this blood is beyond imagination. He is currently absorbing it bit by bit. Once he has completely absorbed it, there will definitely be a shocking change. Everyone suddenly understood and were happy for Tang Zheng. Li Xiaotian's mouth also brimmed with a smile. But the Emperor of Heaven still didn't say one thing. He was very curious about the origin of the drop of blood that had swallowed Fuxi's blood. What kind of blood was strong enough to swallow Fuxi's blood? The Emperor of Heaven couldn't think of it, but he was sure that this was definitely not Tang Zheng's blood. With this kid's cultivation, it was impossible for him to do this. Roar! Suddenly, a deafening roar burst out from Tang Zheng's mouth, interrupting the Emperor of Heaven's thoughts and instantly attracting everyone's attention. A surge of energy burst out from Tang Zheng's body and rushed in all directions. Boom! 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 With a series of loud sounds, rocks flew, and the walls on all sides collapsed quickly. The others hurriedly used their cultivation to resist this shock wave. Tang Zheng's eyes were wide open, and there was a flash of light in them. Seeing this scene of chaos, he stretched out his hand, and an invisible force enveloped this small space. All the flying rocks quieted down and gently fell to the ground. Everything was calm. Tang Zheng smiled embarrassedly and said, "Sorry, it was too loud." He didn't expect that the energy contained in Fuxi's blood would be so huge. Once he absorbed it, his cultivation soared, and he actually directly rushed from the 7th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm to the 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. It seemed that there were only 2 realms, but the gap between them was a chasm. Only those who had experienced it would know how difficult it was to cross this chasm. Fuxi's blood helped Tang Zheng cross this chasm, which was something he didn't expect. The others stared at Tang Zheng without blinking, and discovered that his aura had changed quite a bit. In their hearts, they understood that his cultivation had definitely increased. The Emperor of Heaven looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes and said, "Good boy, you actually broke through to the 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm." The Emperor of Heaven had experienced it before. Back then, he had spent a lot of time and effort to reach this step, which was countless times more difficult than Tang Zheng. Of course, the Emperor of Heaven was very clear that this was the effect of Fuxi's blood. He couldn't help but feel a little envious. That was the most precious treasure of the Fuxi clan, but it was obtained by Tang Zheng. However, he did not have any complaints. Tang Zheng only had this fortuitous encounter because he wanted to help him, and it was not like he was scheming. Therefore, this was completely Tang Zheng's opportunity. 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. The others cheered in surprise. This cultivation was unattainable for them, so they were all happy for Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he stared at the Emperor of Heaven thoughtfully. The Emperor of Heaven had seen through his cultivation with a single sentence. Didn't this mean that the Emperor of Heaven's cultivation was higher than his? 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. This thought immediately appeared in Tang Zheng's mind and his heart jumped. The Emperor of Heaven had this kind of cultivation after successfully returning to the sun, which was really shocking. After experiencing Tian Chanzi's rebirth, Tang Zheng was very clear that after a person was reborn, their cultivation would be greatly reduced compared to when they were alive. The Emperor of Heaven clearly didn't follow this rule. So why was this? Tang Zheng's gaze fell on the Emperor of Heaven's body. This body was no different from a real person, no longer a lifeless stone. A light flashed in Tang Zheng's mind, and he suddenly understood. Fuxi's statue. This must be because of Fuxi's statue. Fuxi's statue had been nourished by Fuxi's blood for countless years and was far stronger than an ordinary body. The Emperor of Heaven's cultivation didn't decrease at all after fusing with this body, and it might even be beneficial to him. Congratulations, Senior. Not only did the fusion succeed, but your cultivation has also reached the 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. Tang Zheng cupped his hands and sincerely congratulated. 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm. The other souls were once again greatly shaken. An 8th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm and a 9th grade of the Great Vehicle Realm, which was almost the highest realm they knew, appeared in front of them. For a moment, everyone had mixed feelings and thousands of words, but they couldn't say it. The Emperor of Heaven smiled softly and said, "Kid, you have a good eye. You actually saw through my cultivation. Not simple." "Haha, same to you." Tang Zheng also smiled without batting an eyelid. Rumble. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.